nights when we were younger, and we would never sleep. So let's forget about tomorrow and live for tonight while we're free. Touch the sky. Tonight we're coming alive. Sunlight begins to fade now, and I feel like I'm losing time, but I don't know how I'm here. The sunlight is turned to gray, and I feel like I'm losing love again. I don't know how I'm here. I could feel your heartbeat. I could feel somewhere you're looking down. I could feel your heartbeat. I could feel somewhere you're looking down. 'Cause it's you I'm loving, and it's you that I wanna breathe. And it's you I'm loving, and it's you.
Hello everybody and welcome along to Simracersworld TV and welcome to the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. You join me and Peter MacKay in the commentary box this evening for round 4 of the Simracersworld GT Evo series. And Peter, I'm not sure how much of last night's stream you watched, but it was one hectic race out there. What do you expect from this evening?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Jack, after a little 2-week hiatus in the SRW Evo series with Porsche-Sport.com. And I have to say, as you know, I'm a massive fan of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and this is the track that IMSA go to in Canada, the one track a year that they go to north of the border, and it's an absolutely fantastic circuit, very old school. First raced back in 1961 for the Players 200, which was won by none other than Sir Stirling Moss in a Lotus 19.
Well, you're always a wealth of knowledge, Peter, and you're definitely not letting us down this evening. And yeah, like you said, it's been a 2-week break, which means drivers have had lots of time to practice here at what is proving itself to be quite a tricky circuit. And like you mentioned before the stream, turns 5 and 6, the Moss section of the circuit, the double right-hander, you can see it on the track map as we look now before the Mario Andretti straight. That seems to be where the main issue is, because it's an off-camber, almost rising right-hander, and all your grip goes as soon as you get to the apex. So I expect lots of drivers to make slight mistakes and possibly even bigger mistakes there this evening. And talking about round 3, we do have the results and the points. So let's have a look at how everybody's lining up at the moment. Rob Tyson on top of the bunch at the moment, 295 points for G-Drive Racing Exemia. Billy Fletcher in second position at the moment for Luxem 24 Esports with 230 points. Anton Dupin in second with 220 points. And Ben Thanes this evening, he's got all the work to do to try and get back into the top 3. Currently in fourth position for G-Drive. Marius Janka in 5th, Kamil Yagizoglu 6th, Ronald Moon 7th, Jesse Hendricks 8th, Bram van Uitven in 9th, and Matthias Sufi in 10th. So lots of drivers this evening that have definitely got something to prove going off last week's race. We'll just scroll it down so you can see who is making up the bottom end of the order. And Cami Sturch, Peter, it was her first race out last week, and she scored all of those 64 points last week. What are you expecting from her this week?
A lot, to be honest. She did really well last time out, and I'm sure today will be no different. Of course, she drives for the very well-known Team Fordzilla team, so no surprises what car she is in, the beautiful Ford GT. And interestingly, mentioning how the last night in the Pro Series, the Moss corner or the Moss section, the turn 5 and 6. Was causing issues for the drivers. Interestingly, Sir Sterling Moss was involved with the original design of this circuit, and when he was consulted, they actually had that corner drawn up as a complete hairpin. He says, no, we'll split it into 2 shorter bends, and it'll be more of a challenge for the driver. And clearly, he knew what he was talking about, because it's obviously if it's going to trip up some of our drivers in the Simracersworld Pro class, well, it's going to be a challenge for anybody. So. Yeah, it's going to be, and also that does present a little bit of an opportunity for a block pass as well. But getting that exit out of there as well, being able to line up an overtake going down the Mario Andretti straightaway is critical as well. And of course, with our 90-minute race, 2 pit stops, there's going to be so much for us to talk about.
Well, I can guarantee it's going to be a very busy evening for us both in the commentary box. And as outlined in the chat, Sebastian Herbert said there's a special guest on track tonight, and it is none other than Mr. Ian Roots, Mr. Simracersworld himself. I will get my words out. And he's piloting one of the Porsches this evening. And, well, last night, if anybody was here for the GT Pro Series, also sponsored by Porsche Sport, I'm going to squeeze that in now. A massive thank you to Porsche Sport for sponsoring the series. You will have noticed that the Porsches have got quicker and quicker and quicker as the season wears on, and the BMWs are slowly starting to lose their pace. And this evening it's starting to look something of the like, because Ben Thanes, the top BMW at the moment, heading the order on provisional pole position with a 1 minute 12.082 as we go into the final 20 seconds of qualifying. And then we get into a sea of Fords, 3 Fords, Billy Fletcher, Anton Dupin and Steve Cooley, and then we get to a Ferrari of Sven Kauber, and eventually we do get back into the BMW. So it seems like the BMWs are starting to lose their dominance, Peter.
Yeah, we've certainly seen them have a bit of the advantage, particularly at Monza, which is a bit of a drag strip. But here, this track here at Mosport is a kind of a story of 2 halves, really. The opening section is very, very high speed and very, very dependent on aerodynamical grip. So you'll see the cars probably, I like to run a very high downforce setup here at Mosport, or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park as it's now known, but of course that does then compromise you on the long drag up the hill along the Mario Andretti straightaway. But interestingly, when we were recording this week's episode of the Porsche Sport podcast together this afternoon, Jack, you mentioned this final section here called the S's and Whites. You likened it to Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, and I'd never thought of it like that, but I was like, God, you're right, that is exactly what it's like. And there is overtaking opportunities there. I've seen it done. I remember commentating on a GT3 race where someone went round the outside, and after the race I said, oh, how on earth did you do that? He says, well, I race here in the real world in the Nissan Micra Cup, and I learnt that move in the Nissan Micra. I thought, I don't even know how to respond to that.
Well, Nissan Micros are a slight bit slower than the GTEs we've got out on track this evening, as qualifying does tick over. Ben Thane's currently on provisional pole position, which will turn into pole position because we no longer have any other cars out on circuit that are on flying laps. So Ben Thanes will take pole position from Billy Fletcher and Anton Dupin, and we'll run you through the grid as and when it becomes available to us. And yeah, I do strongly believe it is like Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. And if you did watch yesterday evening, you will have seen Job de Ligt get past Martin van Loosnoord round the outside there, and then Martin van Loosnoord did exactly the same to Job de Ligt halfway through the race to get into the lead and take the eventual win. And that does beg the question, because we do go to Silverstone in 2 rounds' time. In 2 weeks' time, we've got Imola. Then 2 weeks after Imola, we go to Silverstone. Do you think we might see some very similar sort of overtakes through that little section?
Definitely, for sure. I mean, Silverstone, I have to say, when you take a track as historical as Silverstone, and 10 years ago, of course, they added the new section and changed the circuit quite dramatically in places. And normally you wince when you hear that, but I must be honest, it was brave to take on Silverstone and change it. But I don't know about you, Jack, but I think the new layout of Silverstone, I call it the new, it's a decade old now, but I think it really promotes good racing, particularly when MotoGP come there. But it's certainly with the GT cars as well. So yeah, I think we're going to see certainly more overtaking at Silverstone than we will at Imola. Imola is more just about keeping it on the black stuff. It's a tricky track.
Yeah, I don't have any personal experience at Imola, but I'm sure it is very tricky if Mr. Peter MacKay says so. We do have the qualifying results available to us, so we'll get them up on the screen now. So Ben Thanes takes pole position once again with a 1 minute 12.821. We said he's got lots of work to do to stay in the championship fight, and he's definitely proved me right. He's doing everything he can to stay there. Rounding out row 1, we've got Billy Fletcher, so he started to get quicker behind the wheel of that Ford GT, and we've got to remember last time he was out, he started at the back of the grid and worked his way up into 5th position. He's now starting 2nd, so I can see a possible win for Billy this evening. Anton Dupin starts in 3rd position alongside Steve Cooley. Sven Calbert lines up in 5th with Dieter Ertz for company. Kamil Yagizoglu and Ronald Moons make up row 4. Marius Janker and John McConville round out the top 10. Then we get to Steve and Norman and Cammy Sturge once again with a good qualifying session, starting the race in 12th. We will go down another couple of rows. Stephen Wolf in 13th, Matthias Sufi 14th, Kimber Hates lines up in 15th, Martin Deckens, one of the newcomers to the championship, lines up in 16th, Hendrik de Grave and Dominic Forster round out row 9. Ian Roots, the Mr. Simracersworld himself, lines up in 19th position. Giuseppe Nazzo in 20th. Louis Correa in 21st. Thies Vandenberg in 22nd. Stuart Musselwhite in 23rd. Bram van Uitven in 24th. And I think we've only got a couple more. So, James Hobden in 25th. Sebastian Herberer is the race director. Taylor Lane, Scotty, Angelo, Paul Clist and Dean Timms all starting at the back of the grid. Dean Timms being demoted from GT Pro down into GT Evo, so it'll be interesting to see what the Year 1 racing driver can do amongst this new field.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've seen, the lap times not all that different. Just that more fiercely competed, perhaps in the Pro Series, but it's going to be here. As we can see, our drivers pulling off now behind the Porsche 911 safety car, taking quite a short lap here at Mosport, and that's going to be, I think, for lap traffic is going to be an issue here. I think, Jack, because you saw some of the lap times there, 2-3 seconds separating the field. That will bottle up quite quickly here at Mosport. So, and it's in places it's quite hard to pass. So that's going to definitely be an interesting dynamic. Also, Ben Thanes at the front. He's He's not got his G-Drive teammate to run line astern with this time, so that's going to be quite an interesting dynamic to watch, with Billy Fletcher deciding to take up his grip spot this time rather than starting from the back to get incident points back.
Yeah, we had a very similar situation yesterday where Martin van Loosnoord didn't have the assistance of his G-Drive teammate Bram van Putten. He still went on to win the race, but Job de Ligt for Manatee Racing ended up taking 2nd position, which closed the gap to Bram van Putten. And Bram van Putten, I think, has now been demoted into 5th position in the championship. So not what G-Drive are looking for, and you're not allowed drop rounds. There are no drop rounds, so whatever the points are going into the final round and whatever the points are coming out of the final round, will be how you finish in the championship. So G-Drive, I'm not quite sure what sort of game they're playing at the moment, but they're starting to lose out on some quite valuable points as we're nearly halfway through the season already. And they're starting to drop drivers here, there, and everywhere. And Billy Fletcher, like you say, he's taken up the position of Rob Tyson, so he's losing out on some even more points. And Peter, we're going around the final couple of sections to start the race.
Yep, nearly ready to go here for the Simracersworld GT Evo Series at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Ben Thanes waits for the green flag, and we are go here in Canada.
Ben Thanes leading into turn 1. Billy Fletcher didn't really get the best start there. He's managed to bridge a bit of a gap to Anton Dupin behind it. Looks like everybody's managed to work their way through turn 1. No major incidents or calamities for anybody else. And I think that is probably the best way this race could have started. Dean Timms isn't out on circuit. We're now looking at Paul Clist going quite slowly, so whether he made a slight mistake going through the first little section, we'll go back up to our leaders, and there's already a trio at the front starting to work its way into the distance. Dieter Ertz is leading this massive train, so he's the cork in the bottle for everybody else. Two Dynamics cars, P4, P5, Dieter Ertz and Kamil Yagizoglu. Ronin Sim Sport Academy driver Steve Cooley is getting in on the mix as well. He hasn't got anywhere to go forward and he can't afford to drop back. Look how long this train is in the background, all working its way through the Moss section of the circuit. Two, almost three wide in the background. So everybody really making the most of the start of this race. Taylor Lane once again starting at the back. It'll be interesting to see whereabouts he can finish this race. Back up to the front now. The leaders are side by side. Look at this. We saw it yesterday and we're seeing it again today. Ben Thanes losing out to Billy Fletcher just about. He might have the inside for the final corner, but Ben Thanes now down into second position. Billy Fletcher not wanting to waste any time. I said he could be on for a win, and I wasn't quite expecting him to get up to the front on the first lap, Peter.
Yeah, I think he's maybe feeling like he's got to get that move in early and try and upset Ben Thanes' rhythm, because we've seen it, these BMWs, when they've been the G-Drive cars especially, when they've got clean air, they've just been able to clear away. And obviously Billy, he's been starting at the back quite a lot on his own accord to get incident points back on his season incident point total. And this time he started from the front, and I think he probably felt like he needed to make that move early and break Thanes' rhythm. And look at this already, he is pulling away from him already. So this is going to be fascinating to watch this battle at the front and see if Billy Fletcher will be able to pull away.
Yeah, we've got 90 minutes still to go. That's somebody off the circuit. I think that was the Dynamics BMW of Dieter Ertz. It was indeed. So he has already ran wide at Moss for the first, and I'm definitely certain not the last time. Look at that train, led at the moment by Cami Sturge, newcomer to the GT Evo series. Then it's Dieter Ertz, Matthias Sufi, Martin Decken, Stephen Norman, and just to name a few. In the background, we've got people side by side. This is Thies van den Berg side by side with Giuseppe Nazzo. Giuseppe Nazzo, the Italian, up the inside through the S's, but it looks like he's going to get shown the outside once again. Neither one of the drivers willing to back down. A slight blink for Giuseppe there. There's somebody sideways in the background. I think that was possibly... Who was that that's gone sideways in the background? Oh.
Oh, dear. Oh, no. Yeah, hit the ejector seat button.
That's a little more than sideways,
Yeah.
I fear. Taylor Lane went off the circuit apparently, as well as James
Hobden.
Hobden. James Hobden's had a wiggle.
Lucky.
And there is Taylor Lane hard in the wall, and there's James Hobden on his roof. I think Taylor Lane might just be able to carry on. James Hobden has returned back to the pit lane. We still have a race going on though, and Peter, that does make me think we saw James Hobden have an incident in practice at that exact same point, nearly making contact with Ben Thanes, and for him on lap 2 to make quite a sizable mistake and put him and possibly another driver out of the race, makes you wonder what sort of confidence he had in that car. Yeah,
well, the Ferrari, it's a funny car. It's a mid-engined car, twin-turbo mid-engined, and through that kind of switchback there, as we see the 69 of Ronald Moons having a little bit of a spin there and getting out the way, well done. Yes, at that sort of switchback session, like you said, if you can imagine, but you know, Maggots Beckett's Chapel, where you're left, right, left, and you're flicking the car back and forward, and I think that's what happened there. Was Hobden just got the car a little bit loose, and unfortunately Taylor Lane was very much an innocent bystander and paid the price. But remember, our drivers do have the option of an iRacing fast repair, so they can get the car into pit lane and on its own power and get that fast repair, which Taylor has done, and then he spun it at Moss. So not a good start, but we've seen Taylor Lane all season long, charged through the fields with incidents along the way, but he's got pace under that car, make no mistake about that. So we see, great start for Billy Fletcher. Now, I don't see any sign of Anton Dupin now. He's down in 24th, but started up much higher than that. What's happened to him, Jack?
I'm not 100% sure. I am looking through the event viewer. It says he went off the track, and for all these positions he lost, they must have done it in a very big way or very early on in the session. I'm not quite sure how we missed this. Is this why the leaders have got away? Always tap the grass. Does he keep it out of the wall? He does a bit of rally cross in the wall. Goes Anton Dupin. No major damage. A bit of body crumple on there. The good thing is it's a tyre wall, so it wouldn't have done massive amounts. But this is where he's fallen foul of the train. Look at everybody working through. There goes Paul Clist, I think. He was the final car he had to wait for, and we go back live with him, and he's right the way down in 24th position. So Anton Dupin starting in 3rd position, right the way down in 24th. So not the start Anton was looking for. Back up to the front though, look at this gap Billy Fletcher has already got from Ben Thanes, and we know Ben Thanes is very, very quick, and like you say, it could just be he hasn't got the attentions and the help from his teammate this week. He does have a bit of damage on the front of that car as well, so I'm sure that's playing a part, but not quite the couple of nights G-Driver looking for.
No, and they've certainly had it mostly their own way throughout certainly the GT Evo series. But yeah, and of course, from my memory, I think, Jack, that's the first mistake we've seen Anton Dupin make all season, not just this race. He's been really, really, I think I referred to him as Steady Eddie last, Steady Anton, we can call him, in the last race. But, you know, he's got plenty of time. That's a good thing with the 90-minute races. You can still, and in fact, you've got to get in that mindset that if you make a decision, if you make a mistake early, then you cannot give up. It's typical endurance racing. You've just got to keep pushing right until the checkered flag, because you never know what will happen in front of you.
And it's much to the unpredictability of endurance racing, because everybody can be on slightly different varying strategies, and that's something we'll see tonight as well, with it being a 90-minute race and there only being a 60 fuel cell load limit, so you've got to pit at least twice. Mariusz with a massive moment through turn 2. Does he get it collected up? He has one, collects that up, overcorrects once again on corner exit, ends up on the grass, keeps it out of the wall, loses a couple of positions. I think he actually only lost one from that, so Mariusz with a very, very big moment at the start of lap 6, down into 7th position. That's promoted John McConville up into 6th, and looking at it, as long as the classes are correct, we've got, I heard contact in the background. Who's that in the wall? That's Sven Kalbert. I was about to say we've got a podium for silver, pardon me, in the top 3, and then a podium for bronze in between 4th and 6th. But no, Sven Kalbert had to prove me wrong as soon as I started to mention it. I want to have a look at Ian Roos though, because this is obviously this is part of Simracersworld, and I can imagine he's going into this trying to be as safe and as clean as possible, but for some reason he's already in the pits. I didn't see anything happen to him. I'll have a look through to see if anything pops up on the event viewer, but we still have a race going on. Now look, Mariusz Janka, he's made that mistake, and he's got Sven Kalbert, Cammy Sturch and Martin Deckens on his tail.
Yeah, just looking at the time on the clock on the top left of our screen here, Ian Roots, I'm sure he's coming in to get some sort of damage repair. We know that every driver's going to have to oh my word, yes, that'll need damage repair. Wow, straight turfed straight right into the wall there. Just got a little bit loose on the corner exit. And is he taking a toe? Not sure if he took a toe or not. However, did he take a toe, Jack? Did you say?
Yeah, he did.
He did, okay. So I think that depending if he takes his fast repair or not, which I would suspect he would, because that'll take a long time to repair that damage, I think, bear in mind we're expecting about 40-minute stints at a maximum. So Ian could probably just about make it home on those 2 stops, so only have to stop once more basically, so he wouldn't have to take an extra additional pit stop. So it's not a total disaster, but not the start he would have wanted.
Definitely not. We did see this yesterday for one of our GT Pro drivers. This is Sven Kalbert now losing out to Martin Deckens. So the little bronze battle we saw going on for 4th position has really started to dissipate now. John McConville, though, still out in 4th position. A good drive from the Simracersworld esports driver so far. But yeah, we did see a very similar incident for a couple of our GT Pro drivers where they had to go into the pits very early on. And some of them did make 3 stops, but a couple of them I think got away with 2 if it was into the sort of latter part of the first stint. So I do think you could be onto something there if Ian Roots does sort of save his fuel sensibly and stays out of trouble, and if he can get to onto the tail end of a quicker car and just sit in the draft, he might be able to save enough fuel to get to the end. And tyres is not a massive issue here, I don't think. Although you do have some very high G-force and high demand corners, I don't think the tyres will drop away quite as quickly. And one thing to bear in mind though is the weather, and we haven't had a look at that yet, so let's bring it up on the right hand side of the screen. Only 70 degrees air temperature, 21 degrees track temperature, and I've got to say that is very, very cool, Peter.
Yeah, that's pretty friendly to the tyre. That's going to help. It's interesting. It's a fascinating circuit, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, or Mosport as it used to be known. And actually, if you see this as we're looking at John McConville on the screen, he's put on quite a lot of load through each side of the tyre, and you see it also particularly in Sector 1. It does put quite a lot of load through the tyre as well. So it'll be fascinating to see just how that how that develops throughout the race and how the drivers manage that. At the moment, Billy Fletcher, he's going off at he's going off like a scalded cat right now, and I suspect that could, and it's a could, it's not a would, it's a could. By the end of the race, that could cost him, because we've seen in these 90-minute races drivers having to make the tyres last the whole distance, and by the end those tyres will be pretty second-hand. And I found here racing in an LMP2 car particularly, those high loads going through the faster corners did wear the tyres out, but we'll just need to see how it behaves for these GT cars today.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what or how tyre degradation affects all the different cars as well we've got in the class. And please do correct me if I'm wrong. I'm hoping I don't jinx this and give Billy Fletcher a poor little commentator's curse, but have we had anything other than a BMW win, not just in GT Evo, but in GT Pro?
And certainly in GT Evo we haven't. We had Rob Tyson go on a tear in the BMW, and Billy Fletcher nearly won in round 1 at Sebring, but made a little mistake. But that was when he was in the Porsche. Of course, he took his season car change, got that done after round 1, went into the Ford. So he's in the Ford now for the rest of the season. And at the moment, the Ford is very much in favour, it would appear, with the balance of performance that we see on iRacing. But as we were talking about earlier, Jack, the iRacing season, which is a 12-week long season, the iRacing season will actually will elapse before the end of our Simracersworld season. So at the end of every iRacing season, that's when they do the big updates on the cars, and that's when you see the biggest differences in performance. So I think that's gonna play an impact, and the drivers who are waiting until that happens might well have a bit of an advantage, provided they made the right choice at the start, of course. But it is so difficult to balance. These cars are all completely different. The Ferrari is a twin turbo mid-engined. You've got the Ford. It's a V6 twin turbo mid-engine, but then you've got the front-engined twin turbo V8 in the BMW, and then of course the naturally aspirated flat 6 in the kind of mid to back of the Porsche. So it's tricky to balance them, but actually in iRacing they do a better job than they do in the real world, because the developers on iRacing, of course, a lot of them are sim racers themselves of a very high standard, and they can do lots and lots of laps in every car and gather the data to try and get them as evenly matched as possible.
Well, they do a great job 90% of or 99% of the time. The Porsches this season, I feel like they've been slightly underrated. I know they've got the potential, having driven them at every single special event I've taken part in, that allows the Porsche. And it's a shame that we haven't seen as many towards the top end of the order. The highest placed Porsche this evening at the moment is Giuseppe Nazzo. There's a car off in the background. Was that Bram van Noitveen? I don't think it was. It was a Ferrari of some sort. I think, was it possibly Scott Angelo? It was for Simtech Racing. We've had an incident for Kamil Yagizoglu, and let's see what happens. This is at the Moss corner. We spoke to each other before the stream, Peter, saying that this would be an issue, and he hasn't even touched the grass. He just over-rotated the car over the crest when the balance of the weight of that big BMW swapped from one end of the car to the other and just rotated it through 90 degrees. He continues on there with no dramas. And Bod Boland and Sebastian Herbert in chat saying that, Bod said, tyres not an issue. I was on the rims for the last 5 laps last night. And Sebastian Herbert saying, yeah, my tyres weren't second-hand, they were fourth-hand. So, yeah, maybe tyres will be an issue going into the closing stages of the race. And if Billy Fletcher keeps on tearing them apart the way he is at the moment, building up a 4.5-second lead, I've got a feeling either Billy Fletcher is pushing to build a gap so he takes tyres on the second of his pit stops, or he just isn't aware how much damage he's doing to his tyres.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. It's because you've got two options, of course. They've got two pit stops, one around the 40-minute mark and one maybe, I don't know, half an hour later or something like that. It's hard because for me, I would want to take the new tyres. It all depends on track position as well, but you have the option to if you were going to take tyres, to take them at the opening stop or take them at the second stop. But if you are going to take them, you have to make sure you've got enough time on track to make the best use of them. Of course, taking them 10 minutes towards the end is a waste of time, of course, because in these cars, unlike in IMSA, in the real world, where they fuel the car and put the tyres on at the same time, of course, at Le Mans and WEC, you have to do the two separately. So if you are taking tyres, there is a time deficit to pay, if you like. So for these cars, it's about 20 seconds you've got to spend in the lane longer to get tyres, which is pretty significant. But over on a lap as short as this, when you can be making a difference of over a second a lap, you can get that back if you've got enough time on them.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what people do this evening, knowing full well if any of them watched last night's race, they'll see what the GT Pro drivers have done, and then maybe base their strategy this evening on what they saw. We're currently looking at a battle for 16th position, almost 17th position. The Dynamics Racing BMW of Stephen de Wolf. Oh, in the background, that was Hendrik de Graves throwing it up the inside of Bram van Aertsburn, who has now lost out to Ronald Moon. So let's have a look back just to see what happened there. So here is Stephen de Wolf. This was the original overtake between the Dynamics pairing. Here's the overtake we just saw. So we're now looking at Hendrik de Graeve in the Flemish Sim Sports Porsche 911 GTE RSR up the inside, and he manages to get that position made. And in the background, Ronald Moon sneaks up the inside as well. So Bram van Aertsburn really dropping down the order quite quickly. He was on the tail end of his Dynamics Racing teammate, and he suddenly lost a bit of flow there. There's been an incident behind. I saw there were swapping positions, but Anton Dupin once again with another incident. Tell me what you see, Peter.
Well, this is a disastrous day for Dupin. He gets Moss corner again. I feel our listeners are gonna be sick of us saying, "Oh, Moss corner," because it is so tricky. Because remember, also these cars do not have anti-lock brakes, and when you're basically on the brakes, turning in. So you're asking the car to turn, brake, and go over a jump, basically, all at once, and the car's going, no, one thing at a time. So, yeah, it's such a tricky, and you can see why Sir Stirling Moss, when he was part of the design of this track, all that, back in the late 1950s, of why, he insisted on that, and it's so challenging for the drivers. There's another driver here, it's Billy Fletcher, it's the leader! It's the leader, Billy Fletcher's come off, and nearly hits Ben Thanes on the way by. So, no one is immune to making a mistake there at Moss Corner.
No, our original leader, Billy Fletcher, I know he'll be furious with himself for that, and I'm sure he's streaming on Twitch, and I want to look back just to see what his reaction was to that incident. But now, Billy Fletcher, who had a 4.5 second gap to Ben Thanes, has now got a 4.5 second gap to make up to Ben Thanes. So, Billy Fletcher now in second position, and I've got a sneaking suspicion when Billy Fletcher drives angry, he drives very, very, very quickly, because Billy Fletcher, by a long jockey, is quick a lot of the time, but we very rarely see him angry because we very rarely see him make any sort of major mistakes. So this is something new for us all, seeing what Billy Fletcher can do when he needs to make up lots of time. Let's have a look back, a little further back down the order. We saw this battle evolving a few laps ago, but it's still Ronald Moon's hounding Hendrik de Graeve, basically pushing Hendrik de Graeve around the circuit. We've got Anton Dupin diving into the pits, so maybe he's playing with strategy at the moment, just making sure he can get in the pits, get a full fuel load, or that's available to him, get himself in a rhythm, and then just try and sit in the car for the rest of the race. But Ronald Moon's still hot on the heels of Hendrik de Graeve. At the moment, I think this battle is going to stay where it is, but they're slowly starting to catch up to the battle for 13th position. Louis Correa all the way up in 13th, so it's great to see that Louis doing well. So it's Giuseppe Nazzo in front, so they're catching up to the battle for 14th. Giuseppe Nazzo, Stephen de Wolf, Hendrik de Graeve, and Ronald Moons is in on the mix as well.
Absolutely, yeah. You've seen the Porsches running in flying formation there. That four-wheeled musical instrument that is the 911 RSR, naturally aspirated, 500 horsepower, an absolutely beautiful machine, both in look and sound particularly, and of course very, very successful car as well. Of course, it won at Le Mans in 2018, won the Sebring 12 Hour last year, amongst many other victories. So very, very good in its competition life. Of course, been retired now and replaced with a twin turbo alternative. But this car lives on in iRacing. But another place, I tell you what, Jack, where you can find old school Porsches is Strasse Porsche, one of our sponsors who deal in very, very fine second-hand Porsches and also servicing them as well. So if you've already got a Porsche and you're in the north of England, get down to Strasse and get them to look after it for you. Or if you fancy an upgrade, I'm sure they have lots of nice stuff in stock right now to peruse.
They do indeed. Look at this battle evolving now. This is Kamil Yagisoglu defending, not defending anymore. He was attacking John McConville. I must have looked at the timing screens when those two swapped positions. Let's have a look back just to see what happened. This is on the run up to the S's, and yeah, I thought this would happen here. On the inside, Kamil Yagisoglu losing out, or Kamil Yagisoglu up the inside of John McConville. So John McConville, although he has been demoted off the overall podium, he is still in the lead of the bronze category, or the bronze class, pardon me. He's starting to drop back a little bit though to Kamil Yagisoglu, half a second between the pair of them. I've got to look back at this battle because Giuseppe Nazza was starting to build up a bit of a gap, but now look what's happened. Stephen De Wolf has started to get into grasp distance for Ronald Moons. That was very close between the pair of them. Ronald Moons up the inside, and Stephen De Wolf is going to lose out to both of them, Hendrik de Grave and Ronald Moons, up the inside there. So it seems like the Dynamics car is starting to drop back, because a couple of laps ago a very similar thing happened to Bram van Aertven, and well, that's commentator's curse for you. As soon as you click on him, straight into the wall at the Moss corner, and that is straight into concrete wall as well. So let's see what that does to the car. It looks like everything's still tracking straight on that Porsche. And speaking of Porsche, Peter, where can you go to get all the up-to-date and the best Porsche news?
Oh, Porschesport.com, of course. I have to say now, forgive the self-indulgent trumpet blowing from me just for a second, because if you're a Porsche fan, and you'll remember in 2015, in the second year of the Porsche 919 hybrid LMP1 car, when the Porsche decided to field a third extra car to try and spread its bets, because of course anything can happen, and it usually does at the Le Mans 24 Hours. And they fielded a third car with then new Porsche factory driver Earl Bamber, Nick Tandy and Nico Hulkenberg, the Formula One driver. And they went on to win. They beat the two full-time cars, and much to everyone's surprise, apart from themselves. So I wrote a little story about that a little while ago, and you can check it out on Porschesport.com right now. Is Hendrik de Grave just about rubs a little bit of the wall there, but gets away with it. And pulls out the circuit in front of one of the BMWs there. That's Dieter Ertz. So yes, it's a brilliant website for all your Porsche news and stories, and also a new Porsche directory as well for Porsche race cars and road cars as well.
Thank you very, very much. And once again, just to echo what Pete says, a massive thank you to Porsche Sport. Is James Hobden. Wow, just about getting out of the way. He did sacrifice the left-hand side of his car, and I think possibly a lot of handling with that incident, but he put his foot through the floor trying to get it out of the way. You can see the car trying to spin around on him, so it wouldn't surprise me if we see James Hobden into the pits. But that car's already been on its roof once today, and we'd hate to see it on its roof once again. Ian Reeves has popped into chat saying that he has had a hardware failure, so his wheel failed going through turn 1, and that would explain the massive incident he had. Any old excuse. James Hobden is now out of the race, so we now only have 25 runners. Scotty Angelo is the last car out. Actually, Scotty Angelo, it says he's in the pit lane. There we go. We've actually got some footage of him, and we saw Scotty with that incident a little earlier on, where he ran right through the section of circuit he's going through at the moment. You can see he's quite, I don't know, maybe not trusting on the brakes, because there was a couple of flashes of brake lights going into the corner, and I'm sure there were a few more going around the corner. And do you think that's a massive part of this series, and definitely sort of exclaimed on this circuit, knowing full well that it's quite a circuit there where you've got to have full confidence in your car. If you're not comfortable with the car you're driving and the car you've got underneath you, it will really sort of put you in the wall.
Absolutely, here at Mosport, amongst any other circuit really, because you really are having to put the car on the line. Like this corner here, turn 2 is really, really fast, and you're going over the blind crest, so you've actually got to trust the line. You've got to have done the practice to know where the blind turn-in point is, and yeah, having that, it's not like a single-seater car where you can lean on the aero. I mean, they have good aero, these cars, but not obviously nowhere near as much as a single-seater car. So you have to almost dance the car and know what it's going to do, and you don't want it to be giving you any surprises as well. And sometimes that's what some of the mid-engine, or at least the larger capacity engine mid-engine cars, we see that in the GT3 class with the Audi R8, which is a 5.2 litre big V10, and it gets very snappy with that amount of weight in the middle of the car. So it swings and roundabouts really, but at the moment it's look at that, still 5 BMWs in the top 6. So the BMW is still the big friendly giant, and it's still the car to have, it would appear.
Yeah, the only other car we've got in the top 6 is the Ford GT of Billy Fletcher, who is now only 1.8 seconds off the coattails of Ben Thanes. I hope that's not Anton Dupin going off the circuit again. It is Anton Dupin. He's made one mistake. It's thrown him out of his rhythm, and he just can't get back into it. So he's now been lapped by by people he was expecting to be battling. So Ben Thanes and Billy Fletcher both now got past Anton Dupin. And speaking of the Ford, we've looked from a very high-placed Ford of Billy Fletcher to the lower-placed Ford of Anton Dupin, and somebody who has worked their way back up through the order once again, underdog performance. Cami Sturch all the way up into 7th position, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. She's doing exactly what she did at Watkins Glen. Keep the car out the barriers, keep it on the track, and just keep plugging away at a really, really good pace. And like you say, yeah, she's up to 7th place now, and I feel like this is how we're going to see her throughout the rest of the season, where she's just always thereabouts. And we've seen, I mean, I didn't think we'd be talking about Anton Dupin being lapped at 26 minutes into the race, but it shows you it can happen. And we've seen a lot of very good drivers off the track so far. As we see this, these guys can't leave each other alone, can they? Ronald Moons and Giuseppe Nazzo. But am I remembering correctly, Jack, that Giuseppe was in a Ferrari to begin with? Oh, and this commentator's curse from me again, I'm sorry. Oh no, and then the BMW behind, but Ronald Moons, Stephen DeWolf and the BMW are very much a lonely bystander, but thankfully, that is, that's happened just before the pit lane, so he'll be able to come in and get his pit stop and actually not lose all that much time. But for Ronald Moons, that's a little bit of breathing space for that mistake from Giuseppe Nazzo.
Yeah, not a great mistake for those guys. It looks like Ronald Moons was going to get the position nonetheless up the inside. Oh, maybe not. It looked like Giuseppe Nazzo just went a little bit too hot into the corner, and everything was accelerated by Ronald Moons collecting the tail end of Giuseppe. Nowhere Ronald could go there, but Giuseppe Nazzo getting a hit from behind. And look at the tail end of that Porsche now. I'm sure that might slightly affect the downforce. Bearing in mind the rear splitter is now pointed towards the sky. And I think you did mention that, Stephen DeWolf, that incident happened just before the pit lane, but it also has happened just before the pit window for a lot of these drivers. So if he's careful and plays his cards right, he might be able to get to the end on that, or he might be able to get to the end, only taking one more pit stop. Giuseppe Nazzo losing out once again. That's Dieter Ert getting by in another Dynamics Racing BMW. So he's managed to get caught up with one Dynamics Racing BMW, and Dieter Ert has seen that in the distance and gone, right, I'm getting past as soon as I can, promoting himself up into P15. Dominic Forster, Louis Correa swapping positions through turn 1. And going back to your original point, I did think we who was it? Yeah, Giuseppe Nazzo. I did think Giuseppe Nazzo did start the season in a Ferrari.
Yes, I thought of it. I was remembering that rightly. As we see, getting very close here. It's the number 23 car of Dominic Forster. But yes, I think absolutely, Jack. There's only, if you're coming into the pits now, you can easily get home on one more stop after this. So very much in the pit window, expecting up to 40 minutes, but 35 minutes should be absolutely no problem for these drivers on a stint. So split it 2 times. Yep, no problem at all now. So a little bit unlucky, but also lucky for it to happen right at the pit entry.
Yeah, quite an unlucky but more or less lucky incident for those three drivers. We've got to remember that 3 people were in theory caught up in that. Look at this now, looking back from Dominic Forster back to the BMW of Louis Correa, and then there is Matteo Sufi in the Ferrari, and with a rather insulting logo on the on the rear bumper, the logo of Chas Draycott Media, still beeping around the tail end of that Ferrari. We'll go back up towards the front end of the field. Marius Janker's dropping down the order, and that'll be why he is off the circuit. I'm not sure he's collected the wall there, but that is quite a quick part of the circuit. The battle we were just looking at is whizzing by now. So let's see what happened to Marius going through. Ooh, we might be able to get a little bit earlier on than that though. So let's see what happened. Oh, we just over-rotates the car on the way in, and it's a one-way train onto the grass. And he does a good job of slowing it down before the wall, bearing in mind that is quite a quick part of the circuit, but quite an easy mistake to make, Peter.
It is, but I have to say, I've never seen a car look so good crashing, because satin orange wheels. Every time I see a car with satin orange wheels now, I'm just like, which for anyone else is bronze, basically. And it does look very good. And I have to be honest, I don't know about if you do this, Jack. I'm that much of an anorak that I do. I love going onto the Porsche configurator and designing and speccing a car that I'm never likely to order or own. But it's quite a good way to pass the time sometimes. And I have to say, more and more, I'm speccing the satin orange wheels on the Porsche configurator.
I've got to say, I do that a lot, but that's Maurice Janko around at turn 1.
Again, another one.
Yeah, so we saw Ian Roots get caught out with a hardware failure at turn 1, and now Marius has made a mistake through there.
That was a big hardware failure there.
Yeah.
Massive hardware failure.
That's a big hardware failure. Yeah,
that's a lot of hardware failures today.
Marius Janko continuing on, but dropping down the order now in P15. And we got Matthias Sufi coming out the pits once again for Simracersworld Esports. Who else have we got further up the order battling close? Here's Cami Sturch. It's still in 6th position, but she's losing out to Steve Norman now, so not quite sure what happened there. She's going quite slowly, so she might have picked up a slowdown. It says she went off the track. This will be why she's going slow onto the straight, and we've seen it happen again. And what corner's that, Peter?
Moss. Yep, she's having a big hardware failure there. Yep, that does well to keep it out the wall. We've seen a lot of drivers go into the wall there, so not too much harm. Just loses 1 or 2 spots on track, but keeps the car in good nick, and that's the most important thing. We should also say to Ian Roots, our boss, that of course Roger Penske, the captain himself. He retired from driving himself a long time ago, and maybe Ian should do the same, because Roger owns the IndyCar series. He owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and owns the most successful IndyCar team of all time as well, including many other things. So maybe now that he is the Roger Penske of British sim racing, he should maybe just resort to the pit wall possibly.
Well, I'm sure Roger
no hardware failures over there.
I'm sure Roger Roots is watching on. We've now got Sven Calvert looking to get past Cami Sturch, who's sideways through the exit of Moss Corner. Look, we've got almost a 3-way battle going on here. Kimber Hay, Dominic Forster, and Louis Correa still nose to tail. Louis Correa has dropped back behind Dominic Forster. Kimber Hay is sort of flying the Flemish Simsports flag for himself at the moment, up in 7th position. And then we go right the way back to 18th. For Hendrik de Grave, and then eventually we get to Anton Dupin, who's worked his way back up into 20th position, and if I'm not mistaken, he's about to unlap himself from Billy Fletcher.
Yeah, I can imagine this is a little bit frustrating for Billy Fletcher, having someone of Anton Dupin's pace trying to, like you say, get his lap back, and that's the sort of a bit of an unknown quantity that you really don't want to have when you're up the front of the race, and we've seen that Billy Fletcher does seem to have the ultimate 1-lap pace at the moment. But yeah, there's just a few things, a few flies in the ointment for the number 388. As we see Ben Thanes, interestingly, Ben Thanes has pulled up a big gap again after going back to just nearly a second. Billy Fletcher, he's dropped even further back, so he's obviously made another mistake somewhere along the line.
Yeah, not quite sure what has happened to Billy. The last incident we saw was him losing the lead, I think. I don't believe he had an incident in between now and then. Apparently we've had an incident for Giuseppe Nazzo. Was this the incident we were looking at earlier? No, it's not. This is once again at Moss Corner. Does he keep it pointed the right way? No, he doesn't. Comes back on the circuit, keeps his foot planted and tries to style it out, but rotates the car once again through 360 degrees and back onto the circuit. I think he only lost a couple of positions from that. Giuseppe Nazzo right the way down in 22nd now. We've had a couple of cars dive into the pits already, the first of which being Kamil Yagizoglu. Then it's Martin Decken, Steve Cooley, Sven Calbert, Stephen Norman, Stuart Musselwhite have all gone. Sorry, Stuart Musselwhite hasn't quite got into the pits yet. Then we get to Matthias Supi, Louis Correa, Hendrik de Grave, Stephen de Wolf, Anton Dupin, and Marius Younger and Giuseppe Nazzo all have gone into the pits once already, and I'm expecting to see a few more go into the pits very, very shortly. We've now got John McConville starting to lap a couple of people as well. So John McConville, our current bronze leader, up onto the overall podium once again. And Cami Sturge is up into 4th position with everybody pitting at the moment. So she's 4th position on track, and I'm assuming that will probably be about 6th, 7th position once everybody's come out of the pits. Our leaders in the pits, Peter, it's Ben Thanes.
Yep, so leader in the pit lane, the G-Drive driver, and Billy Fletcher carrying on. So he's going right to the end of his fuel window, which actually, if he can do basically 2 stints, 2 absolute full tanks as far as you can go, he can then short fill on the second and final pit stop. And that might just give him the edge on Ben Thanes. I don't think Ben Thanes has quite used up all the fuel he could have in that opening part of the race. So this is going to be fascinating to watch how that goes out as we see, oh, Anton Dupin. We haven't seen him make a mistake all season, but today it's just going from bad to worse.
Yeah, we did say that this circuit will catch people out, and Anton Dupin is out of the race, Peter. We now only have 23 runners out on the circuit. So Anton Dupin, after a rotten night, he's clearly decided to put the car to bed and pull it into the pit lane because he's not continuing on. So that's a shame for Anton Dupin. He's got the pace to get back up into the points, but deciding it's not worth it this evening. And we know that this is one of the hardest circuits on the calendar. We've already been to Sebring, Monza and Watkins Glen. Mosport has provided the biggest challenge so far. 2 weeks time we go to Imola, then Silverstone, then Suzuka, which I think will be an absolutely amazing couple of rounds. That was Billy Fletcher hugging the inside of the pit wall, just tapping the rear right corner of his car. Then Road Atlanta, then Daytona Road Course and Spa for the final race. And I'm not sure whether that's been put towards the tail end of the season on purpose, but we've got to remember there is an incident point limit, a 60 incident point limit throughout this entire season. And going into Spa, which is renowned for picking up incident points, you've got to be careful how many incident points you carry into that round, because it's more important how many you carry out. If you're over 60, I've got a feeling you're going to get disqualified.
Yep, absolutely. And we have had to see, like you say, a lot of drivers having to start from the back of the grid to try and get that deficit back again. And today, I tell you what, there's going to be a few drivers racking up a few incident points today, Jack, because for anybody watching who is unfamiliar with iRacing or the incident point system, first of all, welcome to the broadcast. Hope you're enjoying it. But so in iRacing, it has a kind of automatic penalty system called incident points, and they are handed out in terms of severity. So if you run off track ever so slightly, you're given 1 incident point. If you make contact with the wall or spin the car, that's 2 incidence points. If you make contact with another driver with enough force, you will be given 4 incident points. So 60 for an entire season of 8 races of 90 minutes each is not very much at all. So you really have to keep your nose clean throughout the season. And today, Jack, if you look at how many drivers that have had spins at Moss Corner alone, actually today there's going to be a lot of drivers that's going to hurt them over the next couple of races, and they might have to start from the back.
Yeah, we know that starting from the back does gain you 20 or starting at the back gains you 10 back, but when you think about it, 10 is more easily earned than gained. Dominic Forster has gone into the pits for the first of his mandatory pit stops. I'm looking for the button that I changed 2 seconds ago and I can't find it. There we go, just to get rid of the battle box. Ben Thanes has come out of the pits 6 seconds ahead of Billy Fletcher, and going into the pits, I think Ben Thanes had a 7.5 second gap, so Billy Fletcher has closed that gap quite substantially. Kamil Yagizoglu now up into 3rd position, and he has taken his mandatory pit stop, so John McConville losing out. Whether John took tyres or not, no he didn't, but they had very similar pit lane times, a very similar pit stop time, so I'm not quite sure how Kamil has got in front, but he has managed to do it. Look back to Martin Deckens, who has got the attentions of Steve Cooley, who is a bronze driver as well. So if Steve Cooley gets past Martin Deckens, that'll be the cork out the bottle, and he'll continue on working his way up towards John McConville. I think we've had an incident for Steve Norman. He's off the road. I saw him dropping down the order. He was in 8th position at that time. Let's see what happened. It says he went off track. Let's find out. Did he have help going through the sector 2? No, he didn't. We've seen it happen before. Touches the grass with that outside rear wheel, and there you go. That's an easy mistake to make, but with big consequences. Spins the car around the sensible way. Make sure he stays off the road. Lots of sportsmanship as usual, Peter.
Absolutely, and we've seen that throughout the season, where there's been drivers have really good perception for that. And here's Kimba Haight in the Ford, trying to get past the Simracersworld car of Matteo Sufi. I tell you what, it's a shame. It's a shame that Kimba Haight's not in a BMW, so you could hide that horrible logo on the back of that car, that circular logo. But the thing it says we've got, that's interesting. To the right of it, you've got a sticker that says Pro, and the one to the left of it, well.
May as well say
Better I stop there. Of course, we only joke, folks. If you're thinking, God, these guys are a bit sassy. Of course, Chaz is our beloved colleague, and of course, the three of us commentated together for a whole season in the Porsche Club Great Britain. And I was saying the other day, Jack, I said it's maybe a good thing that we weren't all at school together, because we probably would have just sat at the back drawing throwback liveries on our jotters and making silly jokes.
Yes, I can imagine what a mess that would have been, all three of us at school at the same time. Yeah, like you say, we would have been just drawing cars and watching British touring cars from the weekend. But we've now got Kimba Haight still in 10th position. There's been a change for position a little further back, and is that another mistake for Stephen Norman? It is. So Steve really not getting used to that Ford, and that's that Ferrari, pardon me. He's now got even more damage on that number 12 Vulcan racing car. Let's have a look to see what happened. It was at Moss Corner once again. There's no point even wondering where it is. Obviously it's at Moss Corner now. But Steve Norman up the hill, locks up the brakes, and there you go, straight into the tyre wall. A bit more crumpled bodywork on the front left-hand side. You heard it hit the wall, but the good thing is it is one of the tyre walls, so it wouldn't have done massive amounts. You saw Mariusz Janka sliding the car around the hairpin there, so maybe that is the best way to get through there. Now Martin Deckens still got John McConville or Steve Cooley on his tail, but Steve Cooley looking really aggressive, and I'm expecting to see a position change in the coming corners. Yeah,
he's really putting the pressure on here, using that Ford has got wonderful off-corner traction now. It just puts the power down beautifully, and the power delivery of the Ford is so nice. It's got that lots and lots of twin turbocharged torque down low, but doesn't deliver it in an aggressive manner. And actually, although the engine will rev to 7,300, actually there's no point revving it above 6,500, because that's where it makes its peak power. So actually, for things like for fuel saving and things like that, you can still get really good drive and really good performance, but obviously you're effectively short shifting. So it's a wonderful car. It does understeer at low speed quite a bit, but at high speed it's got good aerodynamics as well. So it's a good all-round package, and I'm actually surprised we aren't seeing more of the Fords further up front. It just shows you how good that big BMW is.
Yeah, and it's really controlling its weight very well. You see it and you think that is one hell of a car, and it really is. But BMW have done an absolutely amazing job at making such a heavy and quite a beefy car, and it just controls its weight so well. And it has proven it's very competitive, with still Ben Thanes in the lead. Billy Fletcher now 4.5 seconds back, so he's getting ever closer as the race winds on. Kamil Yagizoglu 8.5 seconds back from Billy Fletcher, and John McConville still there in 4th. And then we get back to the battle we were just looking at. Look how close these two are. Steve Cooley diving to the inside, making sure that Martin Deckens knows he's trying to get through. He goes to the inside. Martin Deckens covers off the outside going into the S's, and he backs off does Steve Cooley, but I'm expecting to see, like I said earlier, I'm expecting to see a change for position very, very shortly. We've still got another pit stop to be made as well. We've just about to pass the halfway point in the race, so still lots of action to come. And Steve Norman is diving into the pits after all of the incidents he's had. Maybe just picking up his iRacing fast repair and seeing what he can do with strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, if you cannot afford to take more than the 2 pit stops than you're supposed to, because it's just such a penalty if you have to go in unnecessarily. So, and I think, as we see a bit of puff of smoke there, that's Paul Cliston, the year 1 flip-flops Ferrari. Imagine that has got to be one of the best sponsors you could have, a custom-made flip-flop company. I mean, pretty cool.
It really is. Here's Marius Janker. Has he made a mistake? Oh, that's Scott Angelo, I think. And then he gets collected by Steve Norman. So I think that is why we saw Steve Norman go into the pits. Let's see what Steve Norman saw coming around the final corner. He saw... Oh, I think Scotty was going for the pits. And, well, we did mention sportsmanship, but maybe not the best. Oh, and he's still getting collected by Scotty Angelo. Scotty is in the pit lane entrance sideways. Lots of contact going on there. So I think they're trying to sort out the car park at the moment. Steve carrying on. Scotty Angelo still trapped in the pit lane. We'll go back live with him. I'm assuming he's worked his way into the pits. Oh, he's continued on as Mr. Angelo. Stephen Norman still in the pit lane. Paul Clist continues on as well, who had that slight mistake earlier on. I'll see whether we've got that. We do indeed. Well spotted, Peter. I didn't notice this at the time. Does he lock up, or does he just continue on and touch the grass very close sideways onto the grass? Does a great job of slowing it down. Does he collect the wall? Oh, a tiny little tap, making sure the wall is still there, and continues on. But Paul Clist getting away with that one quite likely, right the way down in 21st position at the moment. And the leaders have started to pull away from each other again. Ben Thane's now 5 seconds ahead of Billy Fletcher.
Yeah, it's strange. It's kind of yo-yoing back and forward. It's a fascinating battle, and this is the thing I love about endurance racing, Jack, is that, you know, you don't have to have cars banging doors for there to be an intriguing battle. It's a different type of product of racing. Often it does come down to last lap battles, of course, but it's really interesting to see at different stages of the race. You think, is Ben Thanes the quicker driver? Is Billy Fletcher the quicker driver today? Who knows? But I think a lot of it is going to come down to the strategy, the time in and out of the lane. And of course, look at Ben Thanes, the front of that car, it's got minor damage, but, you know, it's one tiny tap, and it's just going to get a whole lot worse. And that's bound to be causing a little bit of front end drag. Whereas looking at Billy Fletcher's car, well, it looks showroom fresh right now. And just these tiny little minute differences could make all the difference when we come to the checkered flag.
It really could, and we know how much a bit of aero damage can make those BMWs a tiny bit slower, because the front end profile of that BMW is very, very big, and if you've got a slight crumple of the bodywork and that's affecting the downforce, it will make it slower. But it's not affecting Ben Thanes in any way at the moment. Saying that, as I'm talking about Ben Thanes, he has now lost half a second to Billy Fletcher, and I'm guessing because he's gone through the S's, one of the parts of the circuit where having lots of downforce really does pay dividends. As soon as he goes through there, he loses all his time, but he's just gone through turn 1 and gained a bit of it back. So I do think you are quite right, Peter, that it is affecting him in more ways than one, but he's continuing on, still keeping that gap just around the 4 or 5 second mark. And there's nobody really close on the circuit. I'll tell a lie though, Stephen DeWolf is slowly starting to grab the attentions of Louis Correa, but in front of this is Matthias Sufi for Simracersworld Esports, who is now coming under pressure from Stephen DeWolf as we're now past the halfway point in the race. And these two, we've seen Louis Correa a couple of times, but we haven't seen Matthias Sufi and Stephen DeWolf battling together, I don't think, but they're still fine. I think that's just what surprises me about the GT Evo series here on Simracersworld TV, that you can go into a new round and then find a new sort of playmate, because I don't think we've seen these two battle together at all throughout the season. And going into Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, round 4 of the Simracersworld GT Evo series, he's now found himself a nice little playmate for this round, but then next round he could be battling with somebody completely different. Yep,
absolutely. And there's certain tracks where certain drivers just feel much more comfortable than others, and we see that in real world motorsport all the time. You see drivers that particularly specialize in certain tracks. I mean, for example, the BMW M8 in the real world is perhaps not really had as successful a competition life as perhaps BMW would have liked. However, it's won the very tough Rolex 24-hour at Daytona the last two occasions, 2019 and 2020. And I have to say, this year in 2020, the number 24 car, the Black Bomber, I call it, was it managed to fend off not one but two factory Porsche 911 RSRs throughout the entire race, and it was just so strong. However, it never won at all in its time in the World Endurance Championship, and the program was then pulled. It's won a couple of times in IMSA, including of course those times at Daytona, but it's been a car that's for example, when it would go to somewhere like Lime Rock, I don't think they even finished on the lead lap because it's so tight and twisty and it just didn't suit the car. It's down to what the car likes and what the driver likes.
Yeah, and you can see at the moment it looks like Stephen de Wolf is liking, or it will be in his likeness to get past Matthias Supi for 12th position. But while these two have been battling, look who's really got onto the tail end of them now. Louis Correa is well and truly part of this battle, so it's now a three-way battle for 12th position, and I think these are the closest cars on circuit. Just up the road we do have a battle going along. And this is Dominic Forster leading Ronald Moons, who I didn't even see for a second there. He was hidden behind the Ferrari of Dominic Forster. He's coming under pressure from Dieter Aert, so he's looking to go the long way round through the S's, but we've seen it work on multiple occasions. Once again, a bit of blinking ahead, a bit of door-to-door contact between Ronald Moons and Dieter Aert. Dominic Forster was the Ferrari that you saw blink in, and now look at the run by Ronald Moons going into White's corner, but he doesn't managed to turn that into a position change. But coming out of the final corner, he looks like he gets another great run, but another blink for the Vulcan sim racing car, Dominic Forster, which can be very, very distracting if you're trying to work your way past, but you want to get past and almost be as aggressive as possible, but having zero trust in the car in front, it'll make all the difference.
Yeah, it's one of those things you've just got to contend with in sim racing, is when you see a driver in front blinking in and out like that, you've just got to give them that little bit more room, like you would in the real world. If you saw someone wild and oversteering all over the place, you'd probably want to give them a little bit of extra room. However, it's if you're again, if you're new to sim racing, it can happen. It's often to do with just a slight blip in the internet connection from time to time. Of course, we're racing. It's incredible. We're racing here. All these drivers are dotted all over the world on their sim rigs, and they're, and I'm up here in Scotland and you're in England, and we've got people all over the world watching it. It's an incredible piece of technology, but it does have its limitations at times, and that's one of them. And of course, Dominic Forster, he will be blissfully unaware that that's what's happening. And I always liken it, Jack, into people who snore, because people who snore, they've no idea that they're doing it, but to those around them, it's incredibly annoying.
It is indeed. I can't say I've ever heard that before, but it is very true. Oh, that's Scotty Angelo going into the front of Marius Janka. Marius rotated his car through 90 degrees or 180 degrees at the Moss hairpin and held the brakes as you'd expect, and didn't grab reverse, not wanting to confuse the driver, and Scotty Angelo went straight into him. We've had an incident for Scotty Angelo again. Let's see what happened here. This is later on the next lap. He rotates his car through 90 degrees. Does he get collected by Hendrik de Grave? He does. So the Flemish Simsports Porsche. Oh, and that is, who's that working their way through
John
as
McConville,
well?
I think.
Yeah, that did look like John McConville. So here is the incident. Let's go to John McConville. No, who could it have been? Was it Stuart Musselwhite? It was. Oh, on the brakes, and manages to weave his way in between the pair of them with very minimal damage. But talk about threading the needle, Stuart. That was very, very tight. Manages to continue on there with, I've got to say, I don't think he got any damage from that. The person to come off worse from all of that was Scotty Angelo. He's right the way down in 22nd position, which doesn't sound ideal for the American. Oh, he's now in 21st position, but he has gained 7 positions from where he started, so he's got to be doing something right.
Yeah, he's had a few incidents he's been involved in, has Angelo, and it seems to me that the Ferrari looks really, really tricky coming into the S's. So in those faster corners, it really gets quite upset quite easily. It's nowhere, it doesn't appear to be as stable as the Porsche or the Ford, and particularly the BMW as well. So it seems like the Ferrari is a little bit more knife edge, a little bit more tricky to manage on the faster corners. And here at Mosport, well, that's about the worst thing you could be contending with.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the worst things you could be contending with is, at the moment, Dominic Forster's internet connection, or lack thereof, because I can imagine Ronald Moons is driving in pure desperation to get past the Vulcan sim racing driver. He dives to the outside to see what he can do, but he slows down to quite a lot, and I think that lost him more time than it gained. Bearing in mind, you wouldn't want to do that when you've got Dieter Ayres just behind, who's now alongside, and we know how strong the outside line is through the S's. You've just got to have the confidence and the trust in the car underneath you. Dieter Ayres now in front of Ronald Moons round the outside. I said it was strong. Does it keep the position this time by? We've seen Dynamics BMWs and Ronald Moons go through here sideways before, still side by side through the final corner, and if they're still side by side by the time they're going into turn one, I don't think either of them will decide who wants to be in front. And there you go, still side by side. Ronald Moons on the inside once again, but Dieter Ayres all the way around the outside. It looks like he's going to carry the momentum. A great move from Dieter Ayres. It was a long time coming. He was alongside for a long section of the circuit, but now one Dynamics racing car has got past Ronald Moons. He's now got Stephen DeWolf in another one. Oh, pardon me, no he doesn't. Has he got Bram van Uitven behind him? He does have Bram van Uitven behind him, albeit a lap down, but that will not be what you want. You're trying to battle with a car for position, and if you've got a car in your rearview mirrors, that will play all the part in distracting you.
It will, for sure, and because you just don't quite necessarily know how fast or not they are, and that can be quite hard to judge sometimes as well. Yeah, I tell you what, fantastic respect from both drivers there. Really good from Robert Moons and Ayres as well, because they were running side by side for about 5 or 6 corners, and both giving each other the right room, but racing hard and fair. It's really good to see. And that's, we don't always see it it's funny, it's certain leagues it's just like a glorified version of Mario Kart, and other leagues it can be much fairer. And certainly what the driving standard and the respect that we've seen from driver to driver in this season so far has been really admirable, I have to say.
It really is, and massive thank you, Anton Dupin, in the chat. He's saying that we have been pronouncing Dieter wrong, so it is Dieter and not Dieter, and I've said Ayres, and yeah, it's quite a tricky one, is Ayres. I will stick to saying Ayres, but we will have to change his first name. It's Dieter Ayres. Thank you very much, Anton Dupin, for that. It does go a long way, knowing full well that we've got the confidence to say his name correctly. And I was going to try and squeeze in a bit of a sponsor shout out while we've got a bit of time, and I think we still can. But once again, a massive thank you to Porsche Sport for not just sponsoring the Simracersworld GT Evo Series tonight, but the GT Pro Series last night, and Dynamic Simulators Strasser and Abruzzi for getting on board. We really couldn't do it without you, so a massive thank you to you. But back to the race, which is going on. Look how close this is now. Oh, Dominic Forster blinking it out once again. Peter, what do you make of this?
Yeah, it's certainly tricky. It's Forster's obviously got some form of internet issue right now, which again he won't really necessarily know that that's happening, and unless he's connected by a lot of drivers connect to the in-race audio chat, which is well, if you can imagine, if you remember when the Jerry Springer show was on the TV, and you can remember some of those arguments, shall we say, some of the in-race chat where drivers can speak to one another is kind of reminds me of the Jerry Springer show. But here, I'm sure here in the Simracersworld Evo series, it's much friendlier.
Well, I'm going to pretend I know what the Jerry Springer show is, because I'm
Oh,
assuming
you're joking.
I was probably about -10 when that came out. But Dieter Ayres still in 10th position. I just tend to agree with you now, Peter, if I'm honest. Dieter Ayres in 10th position. Still got Ronald Moons behind him in the Racemasters Esports Porsche. Up the road, though, Dominic Forster still blinking in and out, sparks flying from underneath his Ferrari 488 GTE car. And Dieter Ayres, he's wanting to get by, but once again, it's very similar to what Ronald Moons had an issue with. He was looking to get past. Ronald Moons was trying to get past Dominic Forster, but maybe just didn't have the confidence within maybe himself, but also Dominic Forster's internet connection. He tried to do it and thought, well, I'm just going to pull back and see what Dieter can do about it. And the Dynamics car is still having issues. A big blink there for Dominic, and you can see he's backed off a little bit, but he's now fallen into the grasp of Ronald Moons once again. So the number 69 Porsche trying to get back into the top 10. And this battle has been raging on for a good fair few minutes now, and it's the closest battle. And I'm glad that they're doing this, because by the looks of it, we haven't got anybody else really within touching distance yet.
Yeah, right. Ronald Moons, he's certainly the guy. He certainly gets his TV time for his sponsors because he's always involved in something going on, which is in his Porsche RSR, which is very, very exciting. That's a big look up the inside from Dieter Ertz into Moss. That's a hard one to pull off, but had a go. And he's really putting some pressure now on Dominic Forster. Now, one thing that you'll have heard of the Jeremy Kyle show.
Yes.
Well, it was like the precursor to that. It was the 1990s American version of the Jeremy Kyle show, if you like. Same idea.
Got you. Right, that puts it into perspective now, and I can only imagine what the boys' chat is like this evening. Look at this. Dieter Ertz up the inside and then round the outside. There was a car spinning in the background. I think it got collected in the wall. Ronald Moons now trying to get past Dominic Forster. A good job for Ronald. That it looks like. Oh well, I was about to say Dominic Forster stopped blinking, but going into turn one, another big blink from Dominic. We should really stop bringing it up because I know there's not massive amounts he can do about it mid-race.
You call him Domablink.
Yeah, Domablink Forster. We had an incident for Bram van Uytven in the background. Let's see what happened. This was the car we saw. It's the Porsche 911. Oh, massive hit in the wall. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes into the pits. Oh, hold the brakes. Don't go anywhere. Wow, that is very, very close. And at that point, Bram van Uytven, I can imagine the situation you're in because you don't want to go backwards because cars might go there. And you don't want to go forwards because cars might go there. So you've just got to sit there and hold the brakes in and just hope and cross your fingers to make sure that nobody collects the side of you. But Bram van Uytven, a big hit into the wall. He continues on though into the pit lane. We had Robin DeVille in the chat said he finished with 0 incident points yesterday, and that is definitely an achievement around here because the amount of people that have just picked up little off tracks here and there must be a fair few on its own on top of the contact. So for Mr. Robin DeVille to finish the race on 0 incident points, that really is an achievement, isn't it?
Should have been trying harder. I'm only kidding. That was when I was younger. When I went through more cars than I would like to admit. My insurance company did not like me, and I always just to say, well, if you're not crashing, you're not trying.
Oh, I think somebody who was nearly crashing was Dieter Ertz onto the grass. Oh God, he continues on now, keeps it out of the wall. So all that hard work he's just put into getting past Ronald Moons and Dominic Forster has now all unravelled, and he's back down into 11th position. That will be music to the ears of Ronald Moons because he now has got a bit of a gap to Dieter Ertz and doesn't have to look in his rearview mirrors, and he can just focus on the cars in front of him, or car in front of him. I'm sure he does look like cars the way the connection is blinking in and out for Dominic Forster. Cami Sturge back up into 7th position. We haven't seen much of her, and she's in a world of her own at the moment. 7.5 seconds in front to Sven Calvert and 10 seconds back to Kimber Haight. And I think this is really is going to sum up Cami's season. She does all the hard work in stint 1 and then gets left in a world of her own and just keeps punching in the quick, consistent laps, and that's the best way to go about it.
Absolutely, she's doing an awesome job, and I tell you what, I'm sure her Fordzilla teammates absolutely love her in the long races like 12 Hours of Sebring or 24 Hours of Le Mans because she's so steady. Had one tiny little mistake at Moss Corner, but was able to recover it and not lose much time at all. So you can imagine you just plug her in and watch the laps tick down. She's doing a great job, and of course doing it at a high pace as well. And like I said earlier, I think if she can keep up this form throughout the season, she'll just keep accumulating points all the time. And while others are bound to have their mistakes, but where there hasn't been mistakes, well, Ben Thanes and Billy Fletcher, this has been a fascinating race to watch. Of course, Billy Fletcher, he charged away at the front early on after making a big move in the opening laps, then made a little bit of a mistake, dropped back behind Ben Thanes, and sort of this gap between Fletcher and Thanes is sort of yo-yoed back and forward. It's bizarre, actually. Normally you see a gap, if it gets closed down, then it keeps getting closed down, but it's going back forward all the time. Fascinating to watch.
It really is, and like you say, Cami would be great in an endurance race, just punching in the quick, clean and consistent laps. So never mind Steady Eddie Anton, we've got Steady Eddie Cami in the Ford. 14 Fordzilla still in 7th position. Still got Ronald Moons trying to challenge Dominic Forster, and now I think Dieter Ertz has made another mistake because Louis Correa has got in front of him. Let's have a look. Nothing's popped up. Oh yes, it has. There we go. So let's have a look. Another mistake for Dieter Ertz. Going through sector 1 once again. Oh, that's much bigger than the previous incident. sideways onto the grass and continues on. And one thing, I'm going to watch that back, but put it in slow motion. I think we very briefly saw Dominic Forster blink into the middle of our screen, and if that was what Dieter Ertz saw, he will be very, very scared at that point, seeing a Ferrari just blink in front of you. Maybe, there we go, there it is. I'm not sure whether the stream will be quick enough to pick that up.
But he's not. He wasn't. He was about 10 car lengths ahead. So that was obviously. I've never seen it do that before, Jack. Where he's much further up, but maybe that is how much the blinking was affecting. I don't know, but Dieter Ertz, I think that he's going to be pretty. No, I saw that too. Oh. I saw it too. Yeah. But he was. I noticed that as well, and he blinked, and then when the blink went away, he was 10 car lengths ahead. So there's obviously something not right at all, and I can imagine Dieter Ertz is. Well, he'll be pretty angry, I would imagine, because it's so tricky. Because it's not the driver who's blinking's fault, but it's certainly not the driver who's following. So it can be really frustrating sometimes. But it's just, again, you have to accept that the technology is so impressive. You can't stress enough just how good the technology that we've got in sim racing, both from a hardware and software point of view. But you are at the mercy of internet, which of course you had the joys of earlier on today, Jack.
Yeah, so me and Peter and Kat Impey were on the Porsche Sport podcast, or we were recording the Porsche Sport podcast, which can now be found on Spotify, the PorscheSport.com, and was it Podbean? I think you can also find it on. So please do go check that out. There's much more on the PorscheSport.com website as well. But yeah, we were recording that today, and halfway through our more or less sort of script going through the GT Pro race from last night, my internet decided it didn't want to work anymore. So we've had to find other ways to make sure we can get it out to you. But as usual, Luke Holroyd at Porsche Sport does an amazing job of getting it out to an amazing level. But Ronald Moons, on the other hand, he's trying to deal with someone with probably not the best internet at the moment. Still Dominic Forster in front, and these are the closest cars on circuit. I think the only other cars that are within touching distance is John McConville with, no, never mind, Martin Deckins with Sven Kalbert behind. So that's the gap between the two Dynamics racing cars, and I doubt those two will battle, bearing in mind they're both teammates. So I'm so glad Ronald Moons is trapped behind Dominic Forster, because otherwise we wouldn't have anything else to talk about.
Well, can I ask for permission for a fun fact?
Go on, you can. Well,
yeah.
How long have we got?
Oh, well, we've got 25 minutes of this race left. So, just at that point, Dominic Forster's a little lock-up. I'll be quick then before this goes off. So, in 1967, in Canada's centennial year, so when Canada, the country, was 100 years old, Jack Brabham won the first ever Canadian Grand Prix here. And in the same year, our very own Mike Hillwood won the first ever 500cc Grand Prix motorcycle around here.
Right.
That filled half up.
Well, yeah, that's after the lap finished. As always, a wealth of knowledge, Peter. And it does show that obviously you put in the hard work and effort to get these commentaries heading out. And now, look, we've only got 21 runners out on circuit, which we knew this circuit would claim a couple of people's races, but I wasn't quite expecting it to go from 30 runners down to 21 runners, and we've almost lost a third of the field. So our current retirements: Dean Timms, Ian Roots, Thies van den Berg, James Hobden, Taylor Lane, Anton Dupin, Stephen Norman and Marius Janka all are out of the race. The last runner at the moment is Scotty Angelo, and he's had a rotten race for the most part. You could see the right hand side of his Ferrari looking rather second hand, but this has sort of played into his hands because he started in 28th position and he's up to 21st position, and he can't go any lower than that because everybody else below him has now retired. So Scotty Angelo, he can only go up from here. We've had a change for position a little further up. That's why Camille Aguizoglu, Martin Deckins and Sven Kalbert all in the pits, and I think Ronald Moons and Dominic Forster might have changed positions a little earlier on. Let's see what happened here on the straights. I think it was a very, very brief change for position. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was just Dominic Forster blinking in and out, so Ronald Moon showed as being in front. We'll go back live with them just to see how they're getting on. Dominic Forster still leading Ronald Moons, and Louis Correa behind as they pass the pit lane, pick up a couple more position from Martin Deckins and Sven Kalbert. And somebody who's got quite close up the front end of the order, Cami Sturge back up into fourth position, but Camille Aguizoglu has now caught onto the tail end, so this is now the battle for fourth on track.
It is, and we're coming into the point where we're going to be getting close on fuel pretty soon. Of course, it's about 30 minutes since our drivers, in fact, some cases, more than 30 minutes since our drivers have last been into pit lane. And remember, they only have a 60% fuel cell, which is up to about 40 minutes, but anywhere between 35 and 40 minutes, we'll see our drivers coming into pit lane. So for Cami now, she's got, like you say, she's got Yagizoglu right behind her. And this is interesting, this strategy. Yagizoglu might think, well, I'll just dive in and take my pit stop now, as Cami pulls over, lets him by. Now, this is interesting. Cami, that's very, very clever, because she's maybe thinking, you're quicker than me, I'll just follow you. But for Cami, she can now sit in Camille Yagizoglu's draft and get him to pull her along a bit. So that's very, very wise. And, you see so many drivers that are just too proud when they see a fast driver come up behind them and they just block them all the time, and it just slows both of them down. But Cami's very smart there to go, you're one of the championship leaders, I'll tuck in behind you and get a draft. That's very smart driving.
It is indeed, and we've got to remember, Camille Yagizoglu is the first of the people to pit 2 times this race. The last time Camille pitted was on lap 53, so now 3 laps ago. Who else has come into the pits already? Martin Deckens has been into the pits with Sven Calvert. As soon as we click on him, he goes off the road and just about keeps it pointing in the right direction. Good driving from Sven Calvert. Look who's arriving in the distance. There's Ben Thanes, our current leader, 2.5 seconds ahead of Billy Fletcher now, who will have all this traffic to work through as well. And if I was Ben Thanes, seeing this traffic ahead, if it's within your pit window, which it well and truly is at this point, you dive into the pits to make sure you don't lose any time. But Billy Fletcher will be hoping Ben Thanes stays out on the road, and then he can make the most of it. He doesn't have to deal with all of this traffic. Dive into the pits now and maybe make up the couple of seconds required to take the lead.
Yeah, you're right. I think, and he'll, of course, because he's close enough to see Ben Thanes struggling there in the traffic, Billy Fletcher can really try and jump him here. This would be the perfect time for Billy to dive into pit lane, seeing Ben Thanes getting caught up in all of this traffic. Will he do that? No, he's sticking to his strategy. He's keeping going. So that's interesting. I was just thinking that his car there, the Lux Sim 24, and that nice orange and black paint scheme. Tell you what, a couple of Chaz Draycott media logos with those circular rear lights would look pretty cool on the back of that Ford for Billy, don't you reckon?
I think they would actually, because it's almost Simracersworld-esque is that livery, and yeah, it just happens to be the Chaz's logo is circular. So if you could slap it in the middle of those Ford GT rear lights, Billy, it would mean the world to Chaz, because he is very fond of you. Now we go back to Cami Sturge, who's lost a bit of time to Camille Yagizoglu. Ronald Moons still trying to get past Dominic Forster for 7th position overall. Stuart Musselwhite is still running in 13th, getting to the tail end of Dieter Aerts. We've now got John McConville in the pit lane, just as we spoke about him. So John McConville coming in for his mandatory pit stop. The 2 leaders, Ben Thanes and Billy Fletcher, still P1, P2 at the moment. Cami Sturge, oh, who was that we were looking at that had made the mistake? I heard tyre squeal in the background. I think it was a BMW. Was it Louis Correa that could have made that noise? I don't think it was. Oh, it might have been when we were looking at Ronald Moons. Well, Louis Correa
nearly held it.
Moss corner. Yeah, I got to say, I did think he was going to hold that, but continues on. Dieter Aerts still in 12th position, just about defending from Stuart Musselwhite, who has now got to pit once again. Dieter Aerts is showing up. Well, sorry, Stuart Musselwhite has already pitted. No, I was right the first time round. Dieter Aerts has been into the pits twice, so Stuart Musselwhite has still got to go into the pits. And for Dieter Aerts to have made that mistake and already pitted twice and to be back up into 12th position, it's looking like going to the end of this race, he might just about get back into the top 10.
And Ben Thanes, he's come in for his pit stop. You just see him just at the back of shot there. He's had his pit stop, so he's going to the end of the race. Just 18 minutes to go here. What will Billy Fletcher do? Will he match? He's got through Calvert and Giuseppe Nazzo there. So will Billy Fletcher in the Ford GT, will he take his pit stop now, or does he have the time to be able to go a little bit longer than Ben Thanes here? Can he do that? Let's see as we head through the fast S's. Big demand on the aero there. Big demand on the tyre grip as well. Is he going to dive into pit lane? No, he is not, interestingly. So at least 2 lap difference in strategy between Thanes and Billy Fletcher.
That is rather interesting, actually, because for the first pit stop. Ben Thanes pitted on lap 28, Billy Fletcher pitted on lap 29, and now Billy Fletcher has stretched his tank another lap further than Ben Thanes. So he had 1 lap in hand first time round, he's now got 2 laps in hand. So I've got to say, I'm expecting Billy Fletcher to come into the pits this time, and he will have a shorter pit stop because he won't have to take on as much fuel because he's only got to go 2 laps less than Ben Thanes. So we're on lap 59 at the moment, with 15 minutes just over of the race remaining. It will be a dash to the line for Billy Fletcher, and the only time we will ever really know how close the lead pairing will be is when Billy Fletcher goes into the pits, takes his required fuel to get to the end, and then leaves the pits once again, because at that point we will know whether Billy Fletcher has done enough to get onto the tail end or even get in front of Ben Thanes. Kamil Yagizoglu is now in 3rd position on the road, and 3rd position overall actually, so he has been into the pits as well, and it just really sort of shows how quick the leaders are, because both of them have pitted already, and 17 seconds up the road is Ben Thanes, and now Billy Fletcher is in the pits. We'll keep an eye on Ben Thanes. What do you think is going to happen, Peter?
Oh, it's going to be very, very tight, of course. Billy Fletcher not need a massive bit of fuel. I mean, he'll only really, I don't know, 10 laps or so, to 12 laps maybe to go. So there's not a great deal of fuel required. So it'll be a quick splash and dash. So we'll have to keep our eye on Ben Thanes now. So we'll keep the camera on him on the number 4 G-Drive BMW. He's got, I think is that McConville in front of him or Musselwright? I can't tell the difference between the two of them. So let's see. Where is Billy Fletcher in the Ford? Is that him on pit exit? It is. He's jumped him. He's jumped Ben Thanes. So Billy Fletcher has jumped Ben Thanes in the pit stops with a much shorter time in the lane. So making that fuel go a little bit longer has paid massive dividend.
And speaking of spending much less time in the pit lane, he's now 2 seconds in front of Ben Thanes. Going into the pits, he was 2 seconds behind. He is now 2 seconds, or going into the pit window, he was 2 seconds behind. He's now 2 seconds in front. Pit lane time for Ben Thanes, 39 seconds. Pit lane time for Billy Fletcher, 35.75 seconds. And the time spent in the pit box for Ben Thanes, 13 seconds. And the time spent in the pit box for Billy Fletcher, only 10. So Billy Fletcher he's done something to that Ford or he's just, I think it's all with his driving style, just saving fuel, being conservative, but also keeping it clean and consistent, which is what you need around here to make up that time. And the gap is still about 2 seconds, but Ben Thanes is within viewing distance of Billy Fletcher, so he will have that extra little bit of fire in his belly to get back up into the lead, because I'm sure he will want to continue the G-Drive BMW reign at the top end of the order. But if Billy Fletcher's got anything to do about it, he wants to make sure he is the first non-BMW G-Drive car to get, or the first non-BMW to get a win in the GT series on Simracersworld, whether it's Pro or Evo. Ronald Moons is now in front of Dieter Ertz, and he's just gone past Stephen Coley, and that's why, because he's locked up and in the wall. Let's have a look, see whether we've got that on replay. Tell us what you see, Peter.
That's Stephen Cooley been having such a good race so far. This is coming in the very fast 3rd corner here, and I know what's happened. He's got Matteo Sufi in front of him, and he spotted the Chaz Draycott Media logo sticker. That put him off. You can't blame him for that. Yeah, you can't even blame a hardware issue on that. That's what a shame for Steve Cooley there, but he's taken quite a while to get it back onto the track. A pity for the Ronin Simsport Academy driver in the Ford. But speaking of Fords, now this might be an issue with our timing screen. Billy Fletcher has gone behind Ben Thanes, and that's a massive incident. Just keeps it out. The wall reverses back, but there goes Ben Thanes. He's gone. He has gone. So Billy Fletcher makes a mistake coming into Moss. It was on the brakes into Moss, just touched the wheel on the grass, and he was round.
Yeah, another Ford to have an incident is Cami Sturge. That's one of the quickest points on the circuit, in the wall. Very, very hard for Cami. She drove a perfect race at the start, and it looks like very minimal damage. I kept on saying that the tyre barriers let you get away with a bit. Let's see whether she goes into the pits to take one of the iRacing fast repairs. She does. Such a shame. For the Team Fordzilla driver comes the Moorstrife on pit entry, just clipping the grass and rotating the car 380 degrees. And she's back out on circuit with a fresh car, but now out of the top 10 in 11th position. There's our new leader, Ben Thanes, working his way past, and that's such a shame for Billy Fletcher. He's got a bit of damage on the front end of that car now, so I don't think he will be able to do much about that. That's a car spinning in front of him. I think that was Dieter Ertz. Let's have a look back to see what happened there. He's already off the circuit, so let's have a little look further back. There we go. Through Moss Corner, just touches the gravel. As soon as you touch back onto the tarmac, rotates you through 180 degrees. Hendrik de Graeve has had an off as well. We're currently getting to a highlights reel. It's almost like best of crash. So Hendrik de Graeve for Flemish Sim Sports, does he touch the grass? He does indeed. Locks everything up for a brief moment. Opposite lock, well held. Mr. Hendrik de Graeve, the Flemish Sim Sports driver, keeps on going, and that was some really good car control.
Is that Francois Delacour at the wheel of that car? That was amazing. Of course, Francois Delacour, a French former World Rally driver, he of course took the Tuthill. Have you seen this one, Jack? The Tuthill Porsche took a 911 GT3 Cup car and turned it into a rally car and took it to the Ypres rally, but also to the Monte Carlo. And Francois Delacour on the Monte Carlo in a 911 rally car. I mean, it's just an absolute cool guy overload.
Well, I know what I'm going to be watching tonight, because 911 GT3 Cup cars are brilliant, and I've seen a couple as rally cars, and they just seem to work. I think just the 911 GT3 Cup car in any motorsport. Who's that off the road? So that's Dieter Ertz into the wall once again at Moss Corner. We've had another incident for Cammy Sturch by the looks of it. We'll have a look at that in a moment. But Dieter Ertz, oh, he took a tyre line in and he couldn't get the nose turned in time. A big hit into the tyre barrier. Cammy Sturch has had another incident, so out on circuit with another fresh Ford GT. After the incident, sideways on the way in, touches the grass. Does she keep it out of the wall? No, in the wall again. And it just shows one mistake. It can very quickly turn into many. Please don't take the toe and quit the race, Cammy. I think she might be out of the race, or is she just sat in the pit lane? She's sat in the pits at the moment. Whether she continues on or not, I don't know, but that's such a shame for Cammy after driving what was a very, very good race.
Yeah, it is a pity, and I think, Scotty Angelo has proven that if you just keep the car moving, no matter how bad things get, it's been typical endurance racing, you've just got to keep the car rolling. If you can keep it rolling, you should, because you're always going to collect points, and it's so easy to do, to get upset and stop, but it's it's amazing how much of a difference it can make when it comes down to the crunch at the end of the championship. So yeah, it's a pity there, but understandable at the same time. But Ben Thanes, also, if you look at the front of Ben Thanes' car, that car has been repaired. So I wonder if in one of his pit stops where he repaired that minor damage, maybe with a fast repair perhaps, but it's looking much more factory fresh now, so perhaps that could have been a difference. But I think more likely that difference in pit stop time was down to him maybe having used a little bit more fuel.
Yeah, I think that could be what has made that pit stop a bit longer as well. He comes across the line now to tick off lap 65, 10 minutes of the race to go. Billy Fletcher still within touching distance, 6.5 seconds, but I don't think anything's going to come of it. I think he's mainly going to focus on just keeping the good position he's in second place, and getting the car across the line to get a good haul of points for Billy. I was looking forward to seeing him cross the line, and I'm hoping we can get him in for an interview as well, because that is by far the closest we've got to a non-BMW winning the race so far. But the race isn't over. By all means, Ben Thanes could still make a mistake, and it's more than likely going to be at the corner he's just gone through Moss Corner. The closest cars we've got on circuit at the moment is Ronald Moons chasing down Kimber Haight. You can see Kimber Haight in the Flemish Ford GT, not having his Flemish Ford GT teammate Avanton Dubin out on circuit anymore, sadly. But Kimber Haight up 8 positions from where he started into 7th position at the moment. Ronald Moons is currently in the position where he started, in 8th position, the number 69 Racemasters eSports car. And Ronald, he's not really had any time to breathe. He's always been there or thereabouts with a battle.
And he's just worked his way up the field as others have faltered. He's just kept the car going, kept it steady, and yeah, he's looking like he's going to have a really good finish in this number 69 Porsche. In a very eye-catching paint scheme there, I have to say, in that white, green and blue. Group Jos, I wonder what they do. What do you think they do, Jack? They think they're, Belgium, they're probably a brewery or a chocolatier or maybe even a waffle producer, who knows?
I'm not 100% sure. I've just did a quick search. Apparently they're Unlimited Digital Solutions and Print. So I'm not quite sure what that means, but they do that, everybody. That's in answer to your question. That's what Group Jos do, but Ronald Wayne's clearly got the backing, and he's wanting to show off at the moment. He's had plenty of screen time today, and that's because he's been in plenty of great battles. And He is the closest car on the circuit to anybody else. Yeah, these two are the closest pairing on the circuit now within a second. So not sure what happened to Kimber there, but he's lost a load of time to Ronald Moons. He was about 1.6 seconds. The gap is now 9/10 of a second, quickly dropping through the 8/10 of a second and 7/10 of a second. So very, very slow. This battle is really starting to develop, Peter.
It absolutely is, and it's fantastic to see so many Belgian drivers in this series. Of course, we talk about Belgians in 4 GTs. I mean, Jackie X was just unstoppable in the Gulf GT40, and of course won his first ever Le Mans 24-hour victory at the wheel of a Gulf. Oh no, Ronald Moons gets it loose! Oh, but he hangs on to it. Oh, Francois Delcourt changed cars. That was amazing save at that moment. A little bit of lock up on the brakes, but managed to give it a big dab of Oppo, as car journalists say. That was very impressive indeed. But yeah, it was brilliant to see so many Belgian drivers. And Jack, I think we have to say we need to ask Roger Roots if we can have a field trip to Belgium for educational purposes, to Zolder or something like that. And because you have to have the joy of Belgian fries with their special dipping mayonnaise. It's absolutely delicious. Oh, and a beer, of course.
I think you might need to have a word with Mr. Roger Root, because I'm pretty sure there is something in the making. So you'll have to drop him a message after the race. But we've now got...
Is my invite in the post?
Well, I'm not sure where mine is. I think mine's gone through the shredder, but I'm not 100% sure yet. Ronald Moons, he's started to lose out to Kimber now after that incident, and Dominic Forster now only 7 cents behind. It looks like his internet has improved, and he's making the most of it, up into 9th position. We've got a battle going on behind this line. It's Giuseppe Naso and Paul Clist for Year 1 Racing. Haven't seen much of that car, even with its high visibility flashes here, there and everywhere, but the flip-flop Ferrari is still in 17th position, up 12 positions. Well, I say that, but now only up 11 positions, goes very, very slow into the Moss section. And I've got to say, Peter, that looked like he was just letting Giuseppe Naso by and focusing on getting to the end of the race.
He was, yeah, very good, very, very admirable there from Paul Clist in the 92 Ferrari. Yeah, did exactly the right thing there. Didn't do anything unpredictable and allowed Giuseppe Naso just to make his way around. Very good indeed. I wish we would see more of that from lap traffic. Billy Fletcher's off! Billy Fletcher is off. He's had a moment. He's spun round. He's broadside across the track. He just gets out the way. And I think, is that Yagi Zoglu just gone past in the BMW?
I think no, it wasn't Yagi Zoglu. It was one of the other Dynamics BMWs, but an easy mistake to make. Bearing in mind there are so many Dynamics cars out on circuit. Just to know a few, we do have Camille Yagi Zoglu there. It could have been Martin Deckins in the Dynamics Racing BMW. It could have been Stephen DeWolf in the Dynamics Racing BMW, or it could have been Dieter Ertz in the Dynamics Racing BMW. No, it couldn't have been Dieter Ertz because he is out of the race. But Martin Deckins now, for some reason we're on scenic camera, there we go. Martin Deckins under pressure from Sven Kalbert, and we saw these two quite close together very early on in the race, and the two Dynamics teammates, they've stuck together like glue. And with only 4 minutes of the race remaining, if I was one of these guys, I'd think, well, I know you're my teammate and everything, but this is a position for points. I'd go for it.
Well, there's an interesting dynamic here as well, and that was completely unintentional. I've just realised that. It's an interesting dynamic for these team dynamic drivers. I'm so sorry. That was not even on... I wish that was on purpose. That would have been a good one. Anyway, John McConville, he is in 4th, but more importantly, he is leading the bronze class. Sven Kalbert in this Ferrari here, he is 2nd. So there's John McConville just at the front of the shot in that orange and black car, the Simracersworld car. So Sven Kalbert has an outside choice chance of the bronze victory. So do you think maybe there'll be a bit of multi-21 Fernando is faster than you coming on here just to say, come on mate, let me by, I've got a chance at my class victory here perhaps, but we'll see.
Well, there is your multi-21.
There he is, multi-21. Fernando is faster than you. Do you understand this message? Going, yeah, I do, but I don't like it.
Albert throwing it over the inside. To be honest, I thought multi-21 was Red Bull with Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber. I can't remember where it was.
It was Sepang, I believe, or it was either Sepang or China. I think it might have been Sepang.
I think it was Sepang, yeah. But,
yeah, the Ferrari one was Massa and with Rob Smedley. You remember that one? Rob Smedley coming on the radio, asking like, Fernando is faster than you.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Another incident for Billy Fletcher, 3-2-1. That's a massive wheel. Oh, he's hit the wall again. Oh, and that's a very Roger Roots-esque incident, and he's continuing on, but sadly for Mr. Billy Fletcher, he's lost out to Kamil Yagizoglu, so it looked quite dull for Kamil, although he was on the podium. He's now picked up another position, so he's up into third, and if he's not careful, Billy Fletcher, 14 seconds behind him is John McConville, and another big mistake, we could end up seeing a Simracersworld esports car on the podium, which would be very nice indeed, but I'm sure I'm sure John is just focusing on keeping it on the road, but bearing in mind 7 seconds behind him is the newly 5th placed driver of Sven Calvert for Dynamics Racing, and look at the gap, he's already built up ahead of his Dynamics Racing teammate, so it just shows that he was being held up behind Martin Deckins, and I think these two are still the closest cars out on circuit.
Yeah, they are indeed, and yeah, it's going to take a mistake from John McConville to allow Sven Calvert the opportunity to pinch that bronze class victory. However, sitting second in class right now, 5th overall, very, very impressive indeed. But also, you've got to say, for Kamil Yagizoglu, done a great job to run a really consistent race. Ben Thanes is out in front, but this is the best result of the season so far for Yagizoglu, and he's been consistently running at the front, so he'll take a good haul of championship points here. And for Billy Fletcher, he's going to be going to sleep tonight thinking it's going to be a story of what could have been, because he had every chance to win the race today, and he's just made the mistakes just at the wrong moment.
He really has, but it's all well and good that for Kamil Yagizoglu, like you say, up 5 positions, started in 7th, and from 7th he's worked his way up into P2. The only person to remain where he started is this man here, Ben Thanes, who's just crossed the line now to go on to the final lap of the race. So Ben Thanes, it looked quite dull for him. We saw Billy Fletcher into the lead going around the final corner on the first lap, extend his gap, and one mistake has led to another and another. And Ben Thanes back in front. It's been quite a dominating drive once again from Ben Thanes into the latter part of the race. I wondered what he was missing in the first part.
Well, maybe just working is playing the long game. I mean, 90 minutes is a long race. It's a long time to concentrate for, particularly here around Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. And if I'm not mistaken, will Ben have taken the white flag? So this is the last lap for him now, Jack?
It is indeed. We've just ticked past the 90-minute mark. So Ben Thanes on lap 72. Heading to the line for the final time, going down the Mario Andretti straight, and once again we're seeing a G-Drive Racing Eximia BMW come to the line first. As long as he keeps it on the road through the S's, which I'm sure he does with ease. He has driven a very good latter part of the race, got caught out on strategy, but kept his head high and kept the pace up. And ladies and gentlemen, Ben Thanes crosses the line here at Mosport to win round 4 of the Simracersworld GT Evo Series. Kamil Yagizoglu, in the final few laps, has managed to claim P2, going through the S's now for the final time. I'm sure it looked like he was just about going to squeeze onto the podium, but for Kamil, it's been a mad, mad race. The Dynamics Racing driver around the final corner for the final time crosses the line to finish P2, delighted, flashing the lights. Really, really happy with himself, and so unlucky for Billy Fletcher. He's working his way around the final corner now, looking good for a win, and then looking good for second place, and threw it all away in the final few stages of the race to cross the line and round out the podium. But to win his class, ladies and gentlemen, John McConville in the BMW Simracersworld esports car. It's been a great drive from John, and I'm glad to see that it has paid dividend. 4th overall, but winning the bronze class here at Mosport for round 4 of the GT Evo Series. John McConville crosses the line now. Sven Calvert, that was the gap, very, very close for Sven Calvert. He finishes 5th overall and 2nd in class. Martin Deckins crosses the line to finish 6th. Kimber Haight in 7th, rounding the final corner now. Flying the flag for Flemish Sim Sports, sadly losing Anton Dupin earlier on in the race. Ronald Moons crosses the line to finish 8th overall. Oh, a big hit in the background for somebody. Dominic Forster, his race has definitely improved, and so has his internet connection by the looks of it. In 9th position, the Vulcan Sim Racing driver, number 23, has already crossed the line to finish 9th, and Stephen DeWolf finished 10th, and I'm sure we'll have a more extensive rundown of the order very shortly. But how could you put that race into words, Peter? It was very, very up and down for more than one person. Billy Fletcher stands out for me, but Cami Sturge also stands out for me. She had a very, very good race towards the start, worked her way up through the order, under the radar as high as I think 3rd for a lot of that, consistently in 7th, and then sadly retiring.
Yeah, she did. I was just thinking there, just pondering about Billy Fletcher as well. Also in the Ford, if you recall, we talked at the beginning of the race about tyres, and Ben Thanes was maybe a little bit conservative in pace in the early stages and came on strong at the end. And Billy Fletcher was charging at the beginning, and then of course made a lot of quite uncharacteristic mistakes towards the end. And I suspect that might well have been tyres, and it might have possibly been the same for Cammy as well. So tyres clearly, I think, have played one of the biggest parts of any race of the season so far.
I really do think that was what it came down to. We said at the start of the race that maybe tyres wouldn't play a part, but a couple of people piped up saying no, it really will make the difference. I think it was Bod Boland and Sebastian Herber popped up and said that, and well, it really proved that way. And we do have some race results, so everybody, I'm going to hand you over to the ever brilliant Peter MacKay to run you through them.
So this is how our drivers finished in round 4 of the Simracersworld GT Evo series at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. A fantastic win from Ben Thanes in the number 4 G-Drive Exima BMW, winning by 21 seconds from Kamil Yagizoglu in the Dynamics Racing BMW, making it another BMW 1-2. Billy Fletcher rounding out the podium in 3rd in his Ford GT. Unfortunately, a story of what could have been. John McConville from Simracersworld Esports winning the bronze class today in his BMW, very closely followed home by Sven Calvert in the Ferrari. 6th was Martin Deckens with Kim Behate in his Ford with Flemish Simsports in 7th. Ronald Moons, another brilliant performance from him, the last man on the lead lap in his 69 Porsche. 9th was Dominic Forster, Blink Forster, as we now call him, after some internet connection issues for him in his Ferrari. 10th was Stephen DeWolf in the number 76 Team Dynamics Racing Machine. 11th was Louis Carrera with Stuart Musselwright, the other of the Simracersworld Esports drivers, in 12th. Steve Cooley was 13th in his Ford GT, run by Ronan Simsport Academy. Hendrik de Greve was 14th with Bram van Oytven, rounding out the top 15. Matteo Sufi in the Simracersworld Esports Ferrari was 16th, with Paul Klist in the Year 1 custom-made flip-flops racing Ferrari in 17th, with Giuseppe Nazzo in 18th. 19th was Scotty Angelo in his Ferrari, one of our last finishers. Dieter Aert in 20th, Cammy Sturts 21st, Matthias Janken 22nd, 23rd was Stephen Norman, 24th Anton Dupin, a disastrous day for the Belgian, one of our steadiest drivers and a championship contender, a disastrous day at Mosport for him. Taylor Lane in the Fiercely Forward, well, he didn't go too far forward today, an early retirement in 25th. 26th was James Hobden, 27th Thijs Berg, and rounding out the field, 28th Roger Roots, Ian Roots, 999 from Simracersworld Esports.
Thank you very, very much, Peter, and I'm sure 999 was the number he had to call after that big incident at turn 1. So poor old Ian not managing to take the flag at the end of the race. I think only completing 6 laps. So yeah, I do agree. He should stick to the running part of Simracersworld. Because a rotten race for him this evening. He said he had a wheel failure, so nothing much he could do about that. Do we have interviews? We do indeed. So I think we're going to bring in Billy Fletcher. What do you think? Should we? I don't want to. I've got to be careful what I say here because I don't want to bring in Billy Fletcher just on what happened throughout that race. I don't want to bring up any bad memories.
Well, he's certainly on the. Well, of course, now you're now one of my fellow GSRC commentators, and we have the Richie Hearn rule. And Richie Hearn, of course, former IndyCar driver, and his rule is if you don't get on the podium, you don't get an interview. But Billy did, so let's get him in. Billy Fletcher, another podium finish here in the Simracersworld GT Evo series, but it's going to be a case of what could have been there, I suppose, for you.
I tell you now, not a very happy man with myself.
Tell us about it. What was going on? We were talking about tyres in the commentary box. Now, us commentators were known for talking rubbish, but tell us, were tyres a problem coming into the closing stages of the race?
No, not really. I seem to have an issue in the last 15 minutes of every race I do at the moment. If it's longer than an hour, I'm fine up until then, and then it just all seems to go to pot. It was just gutting. I worked really hard to get into that window behind Ben, and I knew I could do an extra couple of laps on him. I knew with less fuel, I knew I could get out in front of him. And just car caught me at the bottom of that king, and then the 2 times on the grass was very random. Again, mistakes by me. I shouldn't have been out there, but I'd hit the grass many times out there a lot worse. But then 2 times it decided to spit me into the wall.
Yeah, certainly it's a tricky circuit here at Mosport. It requires full commitment in certain corners, like you say. Now, of course, you started off with a great drive at Sebring in the Porsche 911 RSR, but you've taken the one allowable car change to the Ford GT. Tell us about the thinking behind that change and how you're getting on with the Detroit Monster now.
To be fair, before Sebring, I did a lot of practice in the Ford, and I generally drive the Ford a lot in GTE, just comfortable with it. I changed to the Porsche as the team I managed. We were sort of working on the Porsche and using it. After Sebring, I wasn't happy with my sort of speed and performance with it, consistency. So I switched back to the Ford. The last 2 rounds, Monza and Watkins Glen, I've not really made any mistakes in regards to over a run, but I think the difference is I've not been at the front fighting for the win, whereas today I think me and Ben were pushing each other extremely hard and just stepped over the limit too many times towards the end of the race.
Yeah, that's always the occupational hazard, isn't it? Now, while you're live here on Simracersworld TV, Billy, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Yeah, the normal guys, obviously Luxem24, Rob Pearson, Anthony, SimStickers, Paul, Draper Tools, all the guys, you lot for broadcasting this really, really great league. Yeah, so obviously thanks to Ian Root as well, running it, and Seb, etc. for modding it. Yeah, so all you guys just makes this happen.
Thank you for the kind words, and hopefully, Billy, we'll have another chat in Imola in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for coming up to join us.
Thank you very much. Take care.
So that was Billy Fletcher, and I believe my esteemed colleague Jack Werrell is with our winner, Ben Taines.
I am indeed. So welcome to the commentary box, Ben, and well, it looked like it looked for a long while of that race that Billy Fletcher was slowly going to disappear into the distance, but something clicked with Billy, and it just changed for him, and you made the most of it, got out in front, and started to build that gap.
Yeah, well, I think Billy really had the pace around this track, which is very tricky and very easy to go off. But yeah, I got lucky that he had some incidents, I think. And yeah, I just was very, very careful on each part of the track, because I know it's a problem when you get off. I only had the one incident myself, I think. I think I just got lucky that Billy had some few more offs.
Yeah, it seemed like that was the way around this circuit. Just keep it on the road and keep it clean, and that really sort of paid dividends for you. And it's another win for G-Drive, and Martin van Loosenord, your G-Drive teammate, won GT Pro last night, and you've gone on one tonight. Is there anything that can really stop G-Drive?
What can stop us? I think if we stop practicing, then we won't be able to win this. So yeah, it definitely requires a lot of practice. But yeah, I'm very happy with the win. Very happy that Martin could win yesterday as well. So yeah, we're very, very happy.
Well, it definitely shows off the pace of you guys and the effort you put into the practice to keep on dominating the championship in the way that you do. And Kamil Yagizoglu eventually finished second in the BMW. It was looking like it was going to be for the Ford was going to win, and the BMWs were once again, or the BMWs for the first time throughout this entire series weren't going to be on the top step of the podium. But you managed to do it. But we still can't forget that a Ford was in third place, a Ferrari was in fifth, and a Porsche was in eighth. Do you think that gap is slowly starting to close up between the BMWs?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I think all the guys are quite quick. Yeah, they say that the balance of performance for the BMW is that good, but I think the Ford has always been very fast when you look at qualifying times. It's not only the BMW that's fast. So yeah, I think in the next few rounds, yeah, it's possible that the other brands will also be able to compete for the podium, and I hope so.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that. And speaking of the next round, Imola, is it a circuit you're confident round? Have you never been around there? Just let us know what you're thinking going into it.
Whew. Yeah, I drove it, I think, like a month ago in the IMSA series or the Le Mans series. So yeah, I got some practice over there. But yeah, we'll take the next 2 weeks to get in shape optimal for this round, and hopefully take the win again. And hopefully Rob Thijssen will be with me again, so we can have a great race again.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you there. While we've got you in the box and on the stream here at Simracersworld TV, is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out?
The guys at G Drive, you guys in the commentary box. It is always a pleasure to rewatch the streams again. And my wife for being very quiet and let me focus on the race. And my kids for not waking up for 2 hours straight. So that's nice.
Thank you for the kind words, and I'm sure your family are very appreciative of what you do. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at Imola.
Yeah, see you in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
That was Ben Thanes, our eventual winner. Once again, another G-Drive car on top. And I'm going to ask the same question I asked Ben to you, Peter. Is there anything that we can do, or that they can do, to keep on going? Because I'm sure that Billy Fletcher, this will have put the fire in his belly going into Imola to put in those extra couple of hours of practice, knowing full well a win is on the cards.
Yeah, it's certainly he's gonna be fired up for sure. He was certainly he was doing well to control his frustration there. Was Billy Fletcher? I can imagine he knew he had a chance at the win today, and it's going to be it's certainly going to be the most unpredictable race, I think, at Imola for sure. And I think Ben Thanes is absolutely right. I don't think the BMW has such an advantage as we thought it did before for whatever reason. But it'll be interesting to see. And of course, I think the biggest change is going to be when iRacing finish their season before we finish ours, if you like. So there's going to be about 3/4 of the way through our race season. There is going to be a big change in the balance of performance. Make no doubt about it. So that's going to kind of throw up something as well. But the G-Drive guys, they clearly have a very professional outfit. They practice together, and that collective, they've focused on the BMW as well. So they've put all their time into that car and the setup of that car, and I think that's really paying off. However, we also heard from Billy of how comfortable he is in that Ford, and yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see who's going to come out on top when we go to Imola. A very different challenge, a little bit more technical than Mosport for sure.
Yeah, I think Imola will present a new challenge once again. But sadly, that is all we've got time for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. A massive thank you for watching along. And as always, a massive thank you to the sponsors. Please do go check them out. Porsche Sport, go check them out on www.porschesport.com for the latest Porsche motorsport news and interviews from around the world. And a massive thanks to the sponsors alongside them, Strasser, Abruzzi and Dynamic Simulators. Wouldn't be able to do it without you. But Peter, sadly, we've got to round off the night.
Unfortunately, Jack, yeah, that's it's been a very enjoyable race here. Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park is one of my absolute favourite tracks to drive and watch racing on, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And again, must echo the sentiments. Thanks so much to our title sponsor, Porschesport.com. Do check out their site. They've got lots of interesting features on Porsche and motorsport. And I'm looking forward to getting to Imola in a couple of weeks' time. It's going to be a cracker.
Can't wait to get there. I think the next event we have here on Simracersworld TV is I think it's Formula 3, I believe, on the 20th of August at Montreal. So please do pop by then in 7 days' time to catch all the action for the Simracersworld Formula 3 series. But until then, have an amazing evening. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in 1 week time.
Thank you.